Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao coming in for my quick updates today, and we'll be leaving early again. I apologize. Just lots of Thanksgiving events. For full disclosure, I had a garage door fall on my head yesterday, and I'm suffering from a mild concussion, so my memory is a bit off today. So I'm going to go ahead and begin, and then I've got to head to the emergency room to go get picked up. Um, so real quickly, the main issue of the day is that we miss Rosalind Carter. There will be a small ceremony um, this Friday at the Carter Center, and we pray for the former First Lady of the United States. Hamas, believe it or not, is close to reaching a truce agreement with Israel. So the political chief of Hamas will be talking about this evening on World Politics, and the terms apparently will include a 5-day pause in the offensive against Gaza Strip in exchange for Hamas returning some hostages. Meanwhile, lots of rumblings in the tech sector as OpenAI has signed a letter very upset about Sam Altman being sacked by Microsoft to lead research and development of artificial intelligence. Um, Microsoft's a hard company to compete with. Guess they're getting scared and they want to bring Altman into Microsoft. North Korea said it would attempt a third launch of a spy satellite this year. And Boris Pistorius, Germany's defense minister, arrived in Kyiv on a surprise visit to reaffirm his country's support for Ukraine. All of this going on as we are getting ready to prepare for Thanksgiving, and our Thanksgiving message will be tomorrow. Just want to wish everyone a happy holidays, and I'll be going on PBS tomorrow on State Lines, and will be aired on Friday. So I'll be on my way to the station, but I may come in to give a quick Thanksgiving message. Use this time to be with family, enjoy those in your life. And in Wake County, we lost Dr. James West, a longtime serving county commissioner. We pray for his family or any family that has lost a loved one during the holidays. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark Lee to go ahead and get started. I'll be here with a few minutes. Shaquille Latimer is with us. He's asked to join us, so let's bring him in, and he's going to introduce Travis.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things going on in the world. You covered quite a few of them and everything like that truce. There is also the Houthis that hijacked an Israeli linked ship, and apparently that is testing the limits of U.S. deterrent. So that is something else that I was seeing that was going on, and all along those spaces, as it does seem that the war is expanding in a lot of different ways. And apparently, China is stepping up its support for Palestinian cause in a challenge to the U.S. Mideast policy. So China hosts Arab and other Muslim leaders for Israel-Hamas war meet, and definitely that is something where China is exerting some of its influence around the world and all in that space. And I know that you are aware, because you do keep up to some degree with things going on in India, that the trapped Indian workers have received the hot meals and rescue efforts are intensifying. So they're still trying to get those folks that have been trapped over there in the Himalayan tunnels. But apparently the rescue is no closer, but definitely they're trying to make sure that they are fed and able to sustain themselves while they are being attempted to be rescued, and all in that way. Yeah, we talk about budget crisis here in the U.S., and apparently Germany has froze their new spending as a budget crisis deepens there in Germany. So apparently these budget issues aren't just issues of the United States; they are issues of other parts of the world as well. And hoping that Sacha will be coming in, because the U.S. Defense Secretary in Ukraine as well is in Ukraine in show of support. So definitely he's visiting Kyiv and has announced $100 million military aid package. So the Ukrainian president says he's grateful to the U.S. for its continued leadership and support. So there are both of these wars that are raging on and all along those lines. And we've got Shaquille, so I'll bring in Shaquille and see some of his thoughts about a number of things as well. And of course, we've got one of the bosses of the network, Nick Palveda, and all along those lines. But before we get to that, I'm going to take a point of privilege, since y'all take points of privilege with sports and all along those lines. But if you see my eyes a little bit red, that's because I was up late watching my Marquette alumni, or my Marquette alma mater go up against UCLA and actually win against UCLA in a very close game. And now they get to take on the number one team in the country, Kansas, later on tonight. So we'll see how they fare in that one. But they beat UCLA, and the next thing in the Maui Invitational, because they got to go to a Hawaiian trip, is to take on Kansas in the semifinals, and then maybe go into finals against either, I think it's Purdue or Tennessee. So if they win both of those games, so they could be the new number one team in the nation and all along those lines. But that's a lot of ifs in there. But I was up late till like 2:00 watching my alma mater play the game, and it was fun.
Now Steve, I see all the American flags, and I hear you talk about the 8th biggest state. So I thought, too many Americans on this show. I'm going to bring some Australian reinforcements. So we have Travis with us, who runs the Edge Radio. That's a joint project between Edge Radio and Pod TV. I think this is his first appearance on Pod. I'm not 100% sure. You can ask him when he comes. Very good friend of mine. So please, let's bring Travis on without further ado.
Well, I'm waiting for him to pop in. He hasn't popped in as of yet.
I thought he was there. No,
okay. As of yet, but whenever he gets here, we'll definitely bring him on and all in that space. But I'm sitting here waiting for the links, and once he gets in, I will gladly bring him on and everything. So while we're waiting for Travis, like I said, I'm up late, usually doing stuff for Pod TV when I'm up that late, but this time it was to watch that basketball game. So yeah, I'm a little bit on the sleeper side.
The reason why Travis isn't on is because I didn't give him the links.
Technology works if the people can work technology. But by the way, that was a big win. I saw that, Marquette beat UCLA. I did not know they have in front of them Kansas, which is really tough, number one team, and Purdue, who has the 7'4" guy, Mark Edey. And I cringe because my team's the University of Miami, and our center is only 6'7". Do you know how hard it is to go up against somebody 7'4" if you're 6'7"? Like that. So
yeah, those short asses, the 6'7" short asses.
I know they're 6'7" shorties. Yeah, but when I was playing basketball, I could handle people 6'5", but when they're like 6'6", 6'7", it was real tough. I mean, those extra inches start growing on you. You're like,
So I'm assuming that we're all about the same height, just based on the photos I've seen of you guys. We're all about what, 6 foot, 6'1".
Yeah, probably roughly around that same site and everything. I'm waiting for Travis to come in.
Okay, so you're taller than me. Steve?
How tall am I?
Yeah.
I'm about 5'10".
But after getting hit.
5'10".
5'10", okay.
Yeah.
5'10".
He's a tennis player. You don't need to be
smart, depending on my posture.
Yeah, what about
he's a guy you don't want to play
somewhere in there that area. So yeah, you're right. We're all about the same height and everything. One of the things that Shaquille, you guys didn't know this, and Travis is trying to come on. He doesn't have got his camera and everything going and everything. But one thing you'll be glad to know is that while I'm thinking about it, and I know we don't usually talk sports, but I'm just going to bring it up, is in the basketball, particularly in college basketball, there are a lot of players that are from other countries. I think one of the players from the team that we beat, UCLA, was from Serbia. I think they have a Turkish player, and one of our players, Ben Gold, is actually from around the corner from you. He's from New Zealand. So there are a number of these, even on the college levels, international players that are coming over here to play their college ball and everything.
Because there's substantially more money in your
Travis doesn't have
Travis
his devices
is here.
connected. Wait. His devices may be connected. I think I can add them.
Yep.
Poof.
There he is.
For the first time on the Pod TV network. Travis has his microphone muted. Well, that's good. That means
your mic is muted, Travis.
Yeah, Travis is muted right now, so he'll unmute himself.
So Travis is an Aussie just like me. Lots of feedback.
Just like you.
Lots of feedback on your mic, Travis.
It's his first time on Pod TV. You get to
so lots of. He's just like me, very proud of our achievements, like getting out of bed. He's even got a shirt to tell us all about it. Maddie's gone.
Well, he disappeared. He's trying to redo his technology.
Trying to get his camera adjusted and all
hard to beam in Australia because that's like 5 million miles away. I mean, it's like I keep looking at the flights and go, hey, I should go over there. After 24 hours in the air, if you're lucky. You can get there. There's a
where are you going? Where are you going? You're going to Australia via the moon. It's a 13-hour flight straight from LA.
Yeah, but I live in Raleigh, so I got to go from here to LA.
So it's going to take you. So it's going to take you 11 hours to go from Raleigh to LA, is it?
I've done the trip before. It's not going to get any shorter.
Hey, Shaquille, while we're waiting for Travis to get on, and I think Sasha might be here as well. You heard me earlier mention the budget crisis in, I think it was Germany and everything. So what the budget crisis is, because you are a Australian, but you also do a lot of world travel, and we of course had the whole conversation around the possible shutdown here in the United States. So is this something that a lot of nations are dealing with, or is it particularly a lot of the Western nations? Because I do not do the kind of travel that you do, but when I saw that, I'm going like, hey, they have the same problems that we have. So I'd love to hear your, and maybe Travis's take on that, because oftentimes we hear about these budget crises that we have.
I'll just firstly repeat what I'd said before that Travis missed, which is he's just like me, an Australian, and we wear our achievements on our shirts. He got out of bed. That is the achievement for the day. I'm actually British before I'm Australian, just so you know. But although I've only ever lived in Australia, I am actually British. But yes, these problems, COVID actually hit everybody, and the aftermath of COVID has hit everybody. So we all have very similar problems and similar issues. And that's why I do generally let politicians off a little bit on what they're doing, because people say, oh, if it's a left-wing politician like Justin Trudeau, oh, he made all these terrible decisions. And if it's a right-wing politician, it's like, oh, they made all these bad decisions. Look, I don't think politics have anything to do with it. They've made the best decisions that they can based on the advice that they've been given. And everybody's been screwed up by it. What we need to focus on is inflation. We need to focus on is the cost of living. We're seeing interest rates increase all over the Western world. We're seeing housing affordability become we just had a thing here in Australia where one of the big four banks said that having a home loan is going to be the sole domain of the rich if things don't change. So there is a real problem with housing affordability, going to the grocery store, just being able to afford to live. Electricity prices are up, gas prices are up. I think people are really struggling, and it is an issue for all of us.
Yeah.
The solution
Well, real quickly, I've got to run, but Shaquille, you bring up a good point. I mean, I think that, and we're going to talk about this in world politics, is the economic situation now with, inflation, gas prices. Inflation is down, but still interest rates. Well, anyway, what I'm hearing is that the positive impact on the economy still has really been about the $3 trillion of COVID money still being spent. But once that money runs out and interest rates are high, that's really going to have a shock, which could just spiral the economy into a recession. So don't you think, you're an investor, do you think some of the positivity of American economy is short-sighted, and that bad news for Joe Biden with only, the presidential election less than a year away? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, for Joe Biden, I don't disagree with all of his policies, all the things he's tried to do. But I think that because he doesn't have the charisma, because he fumbles over his words, he's looking old, I think that that's going to really be a big... If he had the personality of Ronald Reagan and he's had the same policies, he might actually do a bit better, but he doesn't. And I think that that's going to be a bit of a problem for him in his re-election next year. But just to come back to this issue about the high interest rates. Now, we're talking about interest rates at 4 or 5%. We're talking about inflation is high, but if you look back prior to COVID, the complaint from all the central banks was inflation wasn't high enough. They were really struggling to get inflation to 2%. And so this is kind of making up for that lost time. Interest rates. After the 2007-8-9 debacle, which occurred, we saw interest rates drop to really low levels, sub 1%, negative rates in the EU. Now, what did we all say? Because interest rates prior to that were at, 4 and 5%. So what did we all say? We said this is so unfair for the savers. This is so unfair for the older people in our community who have got money in savings, who are relying on that interest rate, and now they've got interest rates which is lower than the rate of inflation. So even if inflation was to come back down to normal levels, come back down to that 2% range, and interest rates stayed at 5%, is that an insurmountable challenge? Well, actually, 4 or 5% is normally a healthy rate if you've got a growing economy. The problem at the moment is you don't have a growing economy. You've got all these different headwinds all coming at the same time, and I think something's going to give. And my concern, as I've expressed so many times before, is that it seems that the strategy to reduce inflation is to reduce demand. And to reduce demand, what they're trying to do is make it harder for small businesses to access credit, make it a tougher job market, drive the unemployment rate up. and mop up, suck up all of that money, the excess money in the economy, by predominantly having higher cost of living costs like interest rates on homes, and hopefully that will drop the demand in grocery stores and etc. And that's a problem. I don't think that's a very good strategy, but the thing is that is what Jerome Powell said he was going to do. That is what the Treasury said they were going to do. That is what the Reserve Bank of Australia said they were going to do, the Bank of England, and etc. So this is the strategy. I don't like it, but you've got to be very careful what you ask for. If you ask for a lower cost of living, guess what? In 2008, the cost of living in America was really low. Yes, you're in the middle of a recession, but your cost of living was really low. Grocery prices were really low, right? If you wanted to go rent a house, you got that house at a really cheap price. If you wanted to buy a house, you could have it at a really cheap price. Is that what you want? Obviously not. Obviously, nobody in America wants that. But that's what the political system, I think, is going to deliver.
Hey, because if you bring that up, and I definitely want to get to Travis as well, because I know we got another guest.
Yeah, Travis,
but
Kimberly, it's good to see you.
I actually had a guest on yesterday on my show that was from Taiwan. He actually runs a company called Gizmo Spring, but is originally from Seattle. I think as a youngster, he came to Seattle and everything, and we were talking about his life as a immigrant here in the United States and how he moved back to Taiwan, who actually moved and started his company in mainland China, and he was talking about a lot of the things that were going on in that space. And he brought up what you brought up, which is how cheap the cost of living was, because he's probably in his early to mid 40s right now and everything, but how low the cost was at the time that he was living in Seattle, and how cheaply his mother could get a home and all in that space and everything. So he brought that up. He also mentioned the fact that he didn't know how much a Whopper was, but when he was living in Seattle, so this ought to tell you when it was like 99 cents. I can tell you a Whopper is not 99 cents right now and all in that space. But he was talking about some of these economic changes. But Travis, I'm glad that you're here with us. I see we got Adam, who's usually with world politics and everything. But
Adam must have heard his ears ring. I've been talking about you the last couple of days.
Can we hear about?
But one of the things I was curious about, really quickly,
Radio,
and I'd love to hear from Travis about this, is there is a lot of, and me and Shaquille actually sometimes go back and forth around this, as to whether people should be proud if they are part of a group and the group elects its first leader. And one of the stories that I didn't get to is apparently, as part of the populist movement, the fine folks in the Netherlands, the Dutch, are about to elect their first woman leader and all in that space. So there are some people, I guess, that are from the Netherlands that are really proud of this and everything. But I'd love to hear your take on this, Travis. I mean, there'll be the whole conversation around Obama as the first quote unquote minority president and everything along those lines. And of course, if Kamala wins, she would be the first African-American female. So what is your take? Because I know y'all had some conversations around Native American.
I hope you guys are ready for this, because Australians don't really mince their words. So first of all, going through to the property prices, I think people nowadays, especially my generation, we need to pull our heads out of our backsides, because the legislation that's in place now is totally different to what was in my grandfather's era. Yeah, he could buy a house at $6,000-7,000, where now a crappy little 3x1, we're looking at $500,000 in Perth, and we're not even an expensive area. We're the outback capital city. You've got to totally change the way you're looking at the property markets and all that sort of stuff. It just doesn't work. Going into cost of living, the main reason why cost of living is so bad now in Australia is most of us are alcoholics. We haven't changed our lifestyle to match the economic environment. So I really don't care about the cost of living. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I've got 3 kids, and I had a really serious motorbike accident back in 2015. I've got no problems with the current Australian economy at the moment, but a lot of people are struggling because they've got their head in the sand about what's actually happening. A lot of people need to take ownership for their own lives and start saying, okay, this is the system we are in. How do I get the most out of this system? But they're too caught up in everything else, trying to be popular, trying to fit in with everyone else, to actually understand what the system is, what's going on. Education is the biggest failure that I see in Australia. And to be honest with you, from an Australian looking into America, I'd say education is your biggest issue as well at the moment, because a lot of Americans, you guys do everything amazingly. Like, you have some of the most intelligent people in the world, but you've also got some of the most stupid people in the world. And the disparity between the two is absolutely mind-boggling. So first of all, going into the property side of things, back in the day, buying 20 minutes out of the CBD was a far trek to get into the city. Now 20 minutes is the inner city. So you can't be comparing, like for WA, say Dalkeith. You can't say, oh, I bought a house in 1912 in Dalkeith and it was, $20. If you can do the comparison, it's way more expensive. Well, no, like Dalkeith was barely part of Perth back then. It probably didn't even exist. So you now go look at the suburbs, an hour. To get a true comparison, you've got to be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours away from the CBD. You can't be comparing inner city suburbs to today, because it's totally different. The rules around the local councils in Australia have totally changed. The legislation on the WA side of things, like the state council, the state government, is totally different. Okay, remember, I don't know much about American side of things, like when you build houses, but this is for Australian side of things. And the federal regulations are totally different. Like, Shaq, you might be able to answer this one for me, because you know history a lot better than I do. What was the stamp duty rate back in, let's say, 1970 in Australia? Like, they every 3 years or so, they jack the rate up higher and higher and higher. So now when you buy a house, your stamp duty, straight away you're slapped with a $30,000 like tax, even if it's not an investment property. That's on your personal home. That's just, the system is totally different today to what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's not the boomers' fault for the massive disparity in the property prices. It's the government. Both left and right governments have been screwing this up for decades. So please stop blaming boomers for the property prices going through the roof. It's not their fault. Sorry,
Travis,
that was a property rant.
I feel so attacked. I know you're older than me, not by much.
What,
but you're older
2 months?
You sound like my parents here. I've got to give up smoking, give up drinking. And by the way, I live in Dalkeith, Nedlands. So
I know, that's why I said it.
Hey, Travis, just really quickly, the other thing that I asked earlier, and we've gone back and forth on this, is should the women of the Netherlands be proud of this woman leader and everything? I know that sometimes even Kimberly has been a supporter of women when they have done a great job in leadership, and there are some that are not fans. And I mentioned that we have a New Zealand player on my alma mater, Marquette, and some people liked the former leader of New Zealand, who was a woman. Some people did not have a great deal of respect for her and everything. What is your take when these women leaders come in there as this touting of them as leaders, but also blazing a trail, for lack of a better term?
To be honest with you, I don't give a rat's ass whether someone's female, male, gay, queer, whatever. I think when you start labeling people, you're an absolute mupp, and it shows your lack of intelligence. You should be treating people based on their performances and how they treat you. So if she's a great politician and she does a wonderful job, hey, happy days, well done, excellent. You should be celebrated for doing a good job, not celebrate, oh, wow, you're a woman, well done, happy days. No. And going back the other way as well, if you are voting for someone because they're a woman, or you're voting for someone because they're a minority, you're belittling the person, because the accident of their birth is what's determining their value. It's not their actual actions themselves. So I see this all the time, especially in Australian media. They really hype up all the minorities or the labels, and it just infuriates me where you'll have someone who will absolutely bust their backsides off to get ahead, to do the right thing. They're generally a good person, and then they get overlooked purely because of the accident of their birth. They can't help that. There's nothing they can do to fix that. And the other problem is, so let's say you flip it to the other side and say, oh, someone goes, oh, I didn't get that job because I'm this minority. No, you didn't get that job because you're not good enough. And then if it's, let's say the person that was doing the hiring didn't hire you because you are of that minority, why work for that company? Why would you want to work for a company that openly discriminates against you based because of the accident of your birth? Like, what sort of a moron are you to do that? Take ownership of your own life.
The funny thing about that and everything is, I don't mince words either. The funny thing about that is that,
we got about 10 people talking at the same time. Sorry.
Would we have ever become friends if, when we first met, you said to me, look, I really need to have more Fijian Indian friends. Or if I had said to you, look, I really need some more country WA friends in my life, we wouldn't have become friends if that was what we were judging things on. And why doesn't it work the other way? Why don't the woke Americans say to you, Travis, we are short of country Western Australian lawyers, so we need you to come over and do law in America because we're short of this minor ethnicity. It doesn't make
no,
sense.
I would not go to America if that's the reason you're asking me to come over there.
Exactly.
But the moment you turn around and say, I'm only inviting you.
Hold on a second. Shaquille Travis, the funny thing around that, and I'd love to hear Jacoby's thoughts around this as well, is that was actually one of the arguments against President Obama, where there are a number of people on the progressive side that did not necessarily understand the nature of politics, and they knew of Obama as a activist and an activist politician in Chicago. So they were expecting him to do a lot more than he could actually accomplish, because they were expecting he was just going to walk in there and make all of these changes, even though there is a notion that you still have to learn the system and everything. So there are a number of people that were saying, hey, look, he's going to come in here, he's going to do this and that and all of this because he is a activist politician and an African-American activist politician as well. And I can tell you that there were a number of even civil rights leaders that were like, hey, I thought it was just going to be a turn the system, kind of like what they say Trump did, turn the system on his head and everything. But as anybody knows, politics knows, you got to play the system as well. So that was part of the conversation, was that there were people that were expecting him to play the system in a way that he was not able to do. But would you agree with me on that premise, Jacoby, and everything? Because I do know that there have been some activist friends that I have, and you have some as well. So what is your take on that, what I just said?
Well, in terms of playing on the system, I mean, that happens regardless, be it in this scenario or not in the scenario. But my concern, and I think it's a great thing to highlight and to champion and to cheer for these individuals that end up in these positions. I mean, for example, we've had, if you take the states, for example, we've been a nation for years, and to have a first of in the year 2023 is something to, one, think about our progress that we've had, because we have had groups that have been oppressed and haven't had the opportunity to be. But even more so, the question is, why make it into that the only reason the person that got the job was that she was female? Why can't she be qualified? Why does the thought have to be, well, she only got it? And that's where I think the problem comes into play. And when we regress rather than progress our way of thinking. I mean, yeah, we ideally in a utopian society want this whole idea that it doesn't matter that, hey, there's a woman who's a leader. Oh my gosh, it's the first time she's a leader. Truthfully, we all don't want that. We all want the idea that, okay, she got it. So why can't we work towards that? And instead of thinking, oh, well, she got it because she's a woman, why can't we think that, oh, well, she got it because she was the most qualified, where she was the one who actually blew the doors off of everybody and finally broke that glass ceiling that people have held on to. It's the same thing in situations where minorities are held back, because we can say all day, well, I don't care, or this and that. Well, the representation does matter in those situations as well, because a little girl now in that area can say, I can be. Black individuals never got into golf before Tiger Woods started dominating. Black people never thought that they could be president because we felt the pressures and the situations that were going on in the nation. But once that glass ceiling was at least cracked a little bit and Obama was there, then you can see yourself in that position. So representation matters. The fact that we should celebrate progress matters. I mean, that's the part that gets me, is that we always tend to default to, well, she only got it because, or he only got it because. Let's take that idea out and move towards, hey, they're the most qualified, they deserve it, and it's amazing that they broke through.
Kim?
I want to add to that just a little bit, and I might be off base here, but I also think that they use that belittling as a means of an excuse for them losing. Just like Trump, uses always, well, they cheated, they stuffed the ballots, or I lost because I lost because I lost because they. So I think they use that belittling as a means to make themselves feel better as well, not to put them down, but that's all I've heard for the last 2 years. I'd like to hear something else, like I'm going to come back and win because, not I lost because. And it's always fear and pointing fingers, but I
Fear
heard
wins.
that it should be based on merit. And somebody, the people, instead of belittling them, they should just say, look at the achievements that we're making with the policies. Look at the achievements we're making because we worked hard, not just as a woman, but as a unity, as a team of people. I would like to see more teams get into office as opposed to just one person. That way, maybe you do have a diversity of leadership. And everyone says we do have a team. No, we don't. We have two teams that never worked together. I would like to see a unity of people, not Democrats and Republicans, but people, not parties and party favors. And so I agree that is what it is. Want to welcome Adam. I don't know if anyone welcomed Adam to
Yeah, I do welcome Adam. I was
You
going to
must
bring
have
the
heard
Adam
he
into the
is bringing
conversation
Adam.
just really quickly.
I've been talking
And
about
this is
his
the
last
Travis
couple
and
of days.
everything. If I remember correctly, doesn't Australia have a coalition government, and how does that work? Because I know that I brought up to Shaquille, and what Kim is talking about is coalition government, and from what I understand, they don't always work as well as we would like them to work and everything. But tell us about coalition
knowing Shaquille, working with Shaquille for a while now, he probably gave you one of the most convoluted answers and that most normal people probably wouldn't have been able to understand. So there's a lot of parties in Australia. So we pretty much break them down to minor parties, major parties. So we've got the Labor Party, which is effectively your Democrats. We've got the Liberal Party, which is effectively the Republicans. But then we have like the Republicans Light, which is the Nationals. They're supposed to represent the country people. And I say supposed to because even though they get voted into the country areas, they still back all the city slickers. So the Liberals, so Republicans, and the Republicans like the Nationals actually have a coalition where when in Australia you don't vote for your Prime Minister, the party nominates who the party leader is going to be. So in their agreement, you've got to have over 50 whatever percent. So you've got to have a majority to form government, or you have to go to the minor parties to get them to help you to form the 51% that you need. So let's say Labor ends up 30% of the vote, which is the Democrats, and then you got Liberals and Nationals, which is the coalition. And let's say they end up on 35%. So neither of them actually meets the 50%. They then got to go to parties like One Nation, the Greens, No Mandatory Vaccination Party, Great Australia Party. There's a whole heap of really fruity, weird minor parties, like single issue parties in Australia that somehow, we have a cannabis party for legalizing cannabis. So they go and grab all these members of parliament and say, hey, come join us in this coalition, or come give us your, they call it supply. So all these minor parties give supply to the two majors, and then they form whichever one that gets across the line first, they become the leaders. And whoever is the leader of either the coalition or Labor, they become the prime minister. Then they appoint. You don't actually vote for like your Senate, the cabinets and all that sort of stuff. They get appointed by whoever's won seats. And then you have the upper house and the lower house. So the lower house makes the laws. The upper house, they audit the laws and they can send them back down. They're sort of like the goalkeeper. Australian politics is actually quite strange compared to American politics. I don't know if ours is strange or yours is strange, but either way, they're both fruity.
Theirs is strange. I don't know what version of the Westminster system, like how this was mistranslated, but what happens in America is totally different to every other Westminster system in the world.
What happens in America stays in America.
Yeah, I don't think so. What happens in America is broadcast to all of us everywhere else. Adam, you must have heard your ears ring. I've been talking about you to Kim the last couple of days going. I've missed him a couple of times, so I was hoping that I'd be able to share with you. I just want to come back to this whole thing with Kamala Harris, though. Are we in the twilight zone here, when people say, "Oh, she only got the job because she was a black woman," they're not just saying that because of no reason. They're saying that because Joe Biden said, "I'm only going to put a black woman in this position." So, of course, people are going to say, "Well, she only got the job because she's a black woman." And when you talk about representation, see, that's what's really great about being one of the larger minorities, okay? What about the minor minorities? What about the minorities that aren't very well represented anywhere? I hear this argument from you guys, Mark, when you say a person can't be educated if the person teaching them doesn't look like them and share an ethnicity. Okay, so if I enroll in NYU,
I never said
Adams-
that.
Adams
Don't
Law
put words
School.
in my mouth when
Yeah,
Travis said
you
that.
was just
I
pretty
never said exactly that.
if I-
Go, guys.
if I
Too
enroll-
much. One at a time, please.
Yeah, let me finish, please. If I enroll in Adams Law School, I should say to Adam, look, I've got some really bad results here. And the reason why, Adam, is because you were teaching me. What I need is for you to find a British Australian born Fijian Indian person
What are you talking about?
comes from where I come from in India 10 generations ago, even though I don't know where that is. Otherwise, I just can't possibly learn. I just wouldn't be able to absorb the information. See, that would be totally ridiculous. But see, because you
Okay,
guys
because yes, Shaq, we ran on. We get your point, but your point is ridiculous. What you're saying is ridiculous. That's not even what anybody said on here, but that's what you took because you took it to some stupid point that you wanted to make. Oh
But
well,
that's what you always say.
representation
You talk
doesn't matter.
you
So,
talk
Shaq,
about
let me explain to
representation
you.
in your
Let me explain
community
to
more
you.
than
Let
everyone
me explain to you. Let me explain to you. Now, the reason representation matters is because in the US, and I'm not talking about the large majorities, because you got to realize the Black community is not the largest minority in the US. So please understand that and get your facts correct.
I said
So,
the
why
larger
are you
market.
using Western labels?
Stop it, fat boy. Now, the reason,
Jack boy,
again,
wow.
again, the reason representation matters is because you have a position, you have in places where leadership within itself in the U.S. has used different ways to discriminate against women, to discriminate against the LGBTQIA community, to discriminate against Black people, Asians, so on and so forth, all the different communities, because America, yes, was built in a way that systemic racism and institutionalized racism is built into America, and it's sad. But to break down that, that's where representation. Jack, hold on.
Can I ask you
Now
a question
that's where
here?
representation matters, because then you can break down these walls and move through that. It allows for individuals to see that they can be in those positions. But see, you get into this whole mode that, oh, well, I don't care about it. It's not about you. It's not. Every time you come up with this, and it is frustrating because you keep making it about you. You don't care. So what? But the little kid who finally sees that, oh, there's a woman who can actually make it to be president, I can do that. It matters to her. It's the same thing where, oh, well, this Black kid sees that, oh, now I can play golf because I'm accepted in these areas and I don't have to worry about being abused. It matters.
You made your point.
Let's
You
hear
didn't
from
address my
Adam
issue.
for a
If
minute.
what
Let's
you're
go to
saying is
Adam,
true,
Shaq. We've talked
if what
enough.
you're
Let's go to
saying is
Adam.
true,
Let's go
then
to
why
Adam.
doesn't it
Shaq,
apply
let
to other
Adam talk.
minorities?
Let Adam
Let's
talk.
go to Adam for a minute
let's
and
go to Adam.
That's why I
Adam?
keep bringing
take
up
a little bit of a
disruptive show, you
break
don't
and hear
address
what
that
Adam
disruptive.
has to say.
If what you're
Let's
saying
hear
is
what
true, why doesn't it affect
Let
other
Adam
smaller
talk,
minorities?
Shaq. Let Adam talk.
Adam?
let's hear from Adam. Let's kind of take a calm break for a second and hear what Adam has to say.
Adam?
Well, thank you. First thing I'll say is, these Australians are an intelligent bunch. I like them. I wish I could
Thank
go
you.
to Australia, but I can't take the 16-hour flight. Shaq's right that there's a lot of morons here in the United States. Well, just
actually.
broadly speaking, one thing I've noticed on this and many other shows, we shouldn't be relying on the government to solve problems. The key to being successful is two-parent families, not committing crimes, not getting someone pregnant before you're married, and getting an education. That's going to almost guarantee you entry into the middle class. Now, when it comes to race, I think any reasonable person believes that people of all races should enjoy equal opportunities, but a focus on race as the reason why someone got a job or someone received a promotion or became president is wrong, because the focus shouldn't be on our identity. It should be on our accomplishments. It shouldn't be on our membership in a group. It should be on our individuality. And we see a lot of things going on at universities in this country that are doing precisely the opposite, and under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion are actually promoting racist ideas, such as the University of Central Florida, okay, which says that white able-bodied Christians are oppressors, that promote microaggressions. University of California, San Francisco Medical School wants segregated spaces for African Americans and white people. And I think that's wrong, because like I said, what matters is not the color of someone's skin or sexuality. What matters is who they are as a person, the choices and decisions they make. And this country does give opportunity to people of all races and all backgrounds. So I reject the idea that we're systemically racist. What I would say, though, is that if you want to be successful in the United States, it comes down to the choices and decisions that you make, regardless of the adversity that you face. Everybody has obstacles. I've had obstacles in my life, in my family. I've had obstacles in other ways. Everybody has their own, crosses to bear. But what matters is what choices and decisions are you making that are going to put you in the best position to be successful. And with that, I will yield to everyone else, but I will end by saying happy birthday, of course, to Mr. Putin.
Adam,
Adam,
quick question.
really quickly, hold on a second.
birthday?
Just really quickly, Adam. The question I was going to ask to that and everything is, what is your thoughts when it comes to the notion of, like I said, me and Jatopia here in Durham, there is a prominent, and actually they're going to a sports event as well. Matter of fact, they'll be playing 2 days after Thanksgiving, going in the FCS Bowl Championship Series. So there's like a whole tournament to see who wins that particular championship. But North Carolina Central University is a historically Black college and university. Even on some of the campuses like Duke, there are Black student associations and things along those lines. So are you saying that those organizations should be totally disbanded and everything? And the other thing, Shaquille, let's be very clear. I never said that a teacher of another nationality cannot teach somebody else and everything along those lines. That is putting words in my mouth that would not actually say it.
Well,
What I said is that they can be positive role models to folks, and that's even what you're saying. They can be positive role models to people that are of a similar background. Like Mark
the answer to your
is a
question,
friend of mine, and some friends that are students of his that are African American that admire him as a professor that has a lot of notoriety at Duke University and everything, and all in that space. So they admire him, and some of them might even aspire to be him, and all along those lines and everything. That is not to say that he doesn't teach white students as well, and that he doesn't teach other students of other ethnicities. So that is not a fair statement.
You are teaching.
Let's let Adam answer, Shaq, because we've talked a lot. Let's let Adam answer.
Are you the host now? You're not. Mark's
Thanks.
hosting
Thank
when
you.
Steve's not here.
Adam, let Adam talk, Shaq.
Of course, we should welcome the Black Students Association. Of course, we should welcome diversity. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't make judgments about people based on their race or their sexual orientation or their gender or transgender status. People are far more complex. What I look at is what choices and decisions do you make to put yourself in a position where you can be successful. And what I don't think is appropriate is universities, largely in this country, are teaching people to make judgments based on a person's race, sexual orientation, and the like. That is ipso facto racism, and that's wrong, okay? So what we need to be, if you really want diversity, okay, you have to have people of different races and different backgrounds unite around a common set of values. And those values are looking at people's character and actions and not making judgments based on where they come from, what their skin color is, what their sexual orientation is. And the fact that we are doing this in the name of anti-racism is a real paradox, and it's a real tragedy in American society. And our democracy is in trouble not because of Trump. It is in trouble because of the prevalence of stupidity that is pervading this society.
Hey,
Adam,
Travis,
my
just really
question
quickly, hold on a
about
second, just one second, Toby. Travis, just really quickly, because I do want to bring you back into the conversation. So, is it my understanding, because we have a very successful, and I know you have some media background, Jakilla told me that, and everything, and Kim as well. I have some media background with both radio, some print, and some now on this Pod TV, television, and all along this lines and everything. So, We have a very successful, and I understand you love country music, not knocking it. I'm a fan of blues, and blues and country music are related and everything. But we also have a very successful R&B station and everything. So when you come with Shaquille to visit, I should not be taking you to that particular radio station and having you guest host and all along those lines, because it is a very successful African-American R&B station, 97.5. So should I be taking you here when you come with Shaquille to visit?
If I ever, okay, so this is what a lot of people get mixed up with Australians. With race side of things, we just really don't give a shit. One of my favorite performers is a guy from Canada called Dax. He's actually Nigerian, raised in I think it's Canada actually. But he's just done a whole heap of rap collaborations with country musicians, and he's absolutely insanely awesome. Really interesting upbringing, a lot of drugs, alcohol. I think he got shot as well, found the Lord, totally turned his music around. Some of his songs like Dear God is a song he did, just hit 80 million downloads off Spotify. So absolute brilliant, great guy. One thing I do want to bring up, and this might be picking a fight, don't care, I'm Australian, we do that, claiming that no African Americans played or black people played golf before Tiger Woods is just an absolute crock of shit, just to Katobi. There's two people that really stand out. Lee Elder. Shush, let me finish. Shush.
Okay, keep going. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Lee Elder, Calvin Pete, Bill Spiller. Some of these guys have. So Lee Elder and Calvin Pete actually got voted more influential than Tiger Woods when it came to golf. So to say that no black people could play golf before Tiger Woods is utter bullshit. So the same as
to prove you wrong.
No. I was just say something to Toby. You wait your turn. So
Shaq, he and I are talking right now, and I apologize for interrupting. So keep going. Shaq, he and I are talking. Shaq, he and I are talking.
There's been a lot of amazing African American golfers prior to Tiger Woods. I don't know why we're celebrating Tiger Woods, considering he rooted around like a rabbit. He committed adultery. He was not a good person. And as a Buddhist, why would you be celebrating someone who's actually going out and rooting everything that moves? So that kind of shows me where your morals are. If you think Tiger Woods is a great role model for other African Americans, how can you promote that as a great role model person when his own history speaks volumes about who he is?
Can I answer now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So yes, Vijay Singh was also an African American who was actually golfing before Tiger Woods as well. But if you look, when Tiger Woods came into the actual game, there was a spike in minority golfing in every area. So my claim saying nobody, it generally wasn't nobody, because using that, yes, was a blanket statement. So I apologize for using that. There were black people, but in terms of most influential, you cannot say any other black person or any other golfer was more influential to golf than Tiger Woods. Because if you actually look at the statistics and the numbers for when Tiger is actually in an actual golf tournament, the amount of money that goes into and the amount of money that's generated compared to Vijay Singh not being in there or Elder not being in there doesn't even quantify, doesn't even qualify. So for you to say, you shush me, shush, as you said. So again, you know for a fact that when Tiger Woods is in a golf tournament, numbers, viewership, money, everything spikes. So to say that happened with Vijay Singh is a lie. With any other African-American golfer was a lie. The fact that Tiger Woods played in the Masters and was actually the first black individual to play in these tournaments and the first black individual to do this, what you're doing is you're saying that his influence wasn't big or his push on golf wasn't big when that for a fact it was. And then in terms of talking about, to be a role model, yes, he was an adulterer. I have not hidden that, hadn't run from that. But in terms of what he's done in the community, his influence was that people played golf and he could be a businessman. Other than that, he was not the father figure that everybody wanted, that you're making him out to be. He was not the influence on education. Everybody should go to Stanford like you're making him out to be. All those are false statements and false premises that you're putting there that weren't there. But again, factually speaking, any golf tournament that Tiger Woods played in, I hadn't finished.
No, I've got a counter to that when you're done. Just so you know, I've got a counter to you when that one comes up. So I'll let you finish, but just be ready for a response.
Let's
Okay, I want
change up
him
the
to counter.
topic a little bit because Tiger
Oh.
Woods was an adulterer. So was Clinton, and our country seems to love men.
Clinton wasn't an adulterer. The cigar was an adulterer.
Travis and Jatomi
Our
up by
country
themselves.
loves-
Can I get to respond to what was said 10 minutes ago?
Come
on now.
We moved on. Let Kim take it now. Kim is taking it.
I know you moved on, Jatomi. That's why I didn't want you to move on. And
Hey,
I don't think
Kim was changing it. It was getting fun. Shaq, now you're gonna bring it down. What do you got?
gives a shit what
still
you
is fun, though.
I didn't even go back to what Adam said because there were things that Adam said that I could have counteracted. But I mean, let's go with what Kim was going. Kim was
You
going
insisted
fun.
on responding to Travis, but I'm not allowed to insist on responding to you. Is that how it works?
I mean, we're
Kim
going
is taking the floor.
No, so just to make sure we understand the rules, show after show after show after show, you can insist like you did on the election night coverage with Adam. You can insist, but nobody else is allowed to do that. Is that correct? I'm not crying. I'm asking. Is that what
You were
you
literally crying.
Hold on a second, Shaquille and
Is that what
Jatovi.
you
And hold on a
say?
second, Shaquille and Jatovi. And we can get back to that. And I definitely want you to respond, Shaquille. But I was going to bring up something of another nature since Kim was asking me. And that's the other thing I was going to get to and everything. Hold on a second. We can go back to this conversation. We still got time. But one of the things that takes place in the world is there are stereotypes that exist, and sometimes people counter the stereotypes. And I'd love to hear Travis's thoughts around this, because one of the stereotypes that exist is that Italians being mafia figures and everything. And apparently there was a big mafia takedown in Italy. So is this going to shatter this stereotype and everything? But I'm sitting there as I was reading stories and I didn't get to that particular story going like, wait a minute, isn't Italy known for the mafia and
Why is
everything?
that a
But
negative
apparently there is a
stereotype?
major takedown. And I can't remember, Adam, if you are of Italian descent or not and everything. But I saw that in Italy itself, there is like this major takedown of several mafia leaders and everything. So is this going to shake up the mafia?
Well,
sorry. Who's up? Is it Adam or me?
Yeah, I'll just be very.
You, Travis. Go for it, Travis.
I'm happy for Adam to go first. I don't mind.
Go, Travis, because
Yeah,
Adam's
go, Adam.
actually Italian. So, and New York.
Oh,
and
you're
New York's
Italian.
Italian too.
Oh,
So we got some.
Only Italian word I know is fungule.
There you go. And Italians in North Jersey, don't necessarily see that as a negative stereotype. But on the broader issue of stereotypes, if we all agree that stereotyping people is a bad thing, which I do, then our universities and politicians shouldn't be teaching people to stereotype in the name of anti-racism. And that's precisely what they're doing by calling white people privileged and oppressors, okay? And by divvying us on the basis of race and sexual orientation. They're doing precisely what they're speaking against. And that's why our country is so divisive and why diversity is not realizing its promise in this country.
But Adam, just really quickly, were you surprised that in Italy they actually jailed 200 mobsters and they apparently got 2,200 years in prison term for their various mob links and everything? So, like I said,
I'm not surprised because they must have done something really bad. And I think that generally, even if you're in Italy, the mob does not enjoy much support. In New Jersey, the feeling towards the mafia is this. They shouldn't be prosecuted because what they do is part of their own culture and infighting, and we should leave them alone. That is the sentiment. I do not agree with that sentiment because of the effects that the mafia has on people not in the mafia. But in northern New Jersey, the mob is pretty pervasive, and I dare say garners a deal of respect.
So the kids of mob bosses that are wanting to go straight really can't be educated unless there's a mob boss educating them, I assume, at university. Let me. Okay, it was a cheap
Almost.
shot. It was a cheap shot. But let me just say, this is the issue that I keep bringing up that nobody can, not that Toby and Mark just don't want to respond to, and don't respond to it now. I'll give you plenty of time. Respond to it on tomorrow's show or another show.
Don't want to respond to it because you're not going to let me respond.
You've got time to think about it. You've got time to go and see what the progressives have to say about it. If it really is true that minorities benefit when there is faces that they recognize as being from their own minority, then why doesn't that apply to smaller minorities that are so small that they don't have faces that look like theirs? Why doesn't the same thing apply? Clearly, people who are from those smaller minorities are successful in the United States, so maybe the US isn't as bad as you guys try to make it out to be. Adam, I've got a question for you. Why is it that we're saying, and look, the laws in Australia are a little bit different to yours, but I'm just going to talk about the United States. Why is it that we're seeing children at your schools being essentially forced to, swear an allegiance to, the rainbow flag, the LGBTQ community, all these other issues? I thought that this was quite well decided case law. I forget off the top of my head exactly what it is. I'm sure you will know it. Board of Education, West Virginia versus Barrett or Barnett, something like that, which was the Jehovah's Witness children that didn't want to swear an allegiance to the flag. I thought compelled speech was not allowed. Why are normal kids being forced to do this by school districts across the US?
Nobody's doing that, Shaq.
Maybe that was a question to Adam. Toby, it was a question to Adam. You're
Okay, but
correct.
nobody's doing that. You made a false premise.
You constantly lecture me about it. You be
Okay,
quiet.
ask Adam your fake question.
Oh, my fake question. Good. If you don't
Adam,
want
what's
to-
your answer though? Because you are
listen
the
to it.
lawyer in the bunch and everything. So is there? And I have heard that conversations around even the rights of people that want to not do prayer or do other things because they've got certain objections to it because of their beliefs, whether that's the Jehovah's Witness or the Seventh-day Adventists or a number of others.
Okay,
kind of play
so
to
why,
what-
so why doesn't that apply then to people that don't want their children to have to swear an allegiance to the LGBTQ flag or Black Lives Matter or anything else for that matter?
Nobody's doing
Why
that.
does that not apply? If the law of West Virginia is the West Virginia Board of
So
Education,
you're correct. You're correct that under the First Amendment, you cannot compel a person to engage in speech that they disagree with or that's against their values. Two things, though. At private universities, the Constitution does not apply. And number two, technically, they're not compelling people to say certain things, but it does reflect a broader problem at universities that I think you're highlighting. That universities, as much as they preach diversity, they are very uniform in who they hire. The professors, especially in social sciences, are largely left to the left, and that means that they teach students, and students only are exposed to one side of an argument often, particularly in the social sciences. Now, as far as minorities go, we talk about minorities like Black, white, gay, but the thing is, they are not a monolith. There is an incredible amount of diversity within the Black community, within the white community. So when we try to divvy people up by race, we're making these broad categorizations that don't reflect what we should really be focusing, which is an individual and their individual characteristics beyond race. I look at someone as a person based on the decisions and choices they make, not their membership in a group.
So my question then, Adam, to you, is it okay to teach history? Because our history, I mean, the true history. Shaq, hold on, Shaq. There you go. Hold on.
Of
So,
course
Shaq,
it is.
So in our history, there are some very, very bad things, and those bad things have led to things to continue even today. Because even in another show that we've had discussions about, you've even talked about the institutionalized racism based within the academic system, based on the finances that are going on through the neighborhoods and not being able to fund these schools.
That's
and not
correct.
being able to equally. So therefore, if we aren't even having, if we're trying to, we're all wanting that utopian society. We're all wanting the point where we can judge each other and say, yes, you're all qualified because of this. But to get there, we cannot forget our history, and we cannot ignore the stuff that's going on. Because if we do that, we'll never get to that point.
So let me respond to that by saying, yes, we should absolutely teach all aspects of our history, but there's a difference between teaching history and then editorializing about it. and injecting
Well-
your own subjective opinions. And I sense that happens in I see it happen in many ways.
But it's saying that the editorializing only happens from one side when the majority of that side is the one that's upset. For example, when we're talking about banning books, the majority is what's trying to ban the books from the minority. So again, if history is written by the winners or the majority population has their say, slavery would have been a positive, as what's being pushed in Florida. That same group that you said is trying to destroy and change things. They would have said that slavery was a choice, which is something that is, again, pushed by the majority. They would have said that, oh, slavery would have ended had it just had, which these things are all untrue.
Right. So,
And so
What
these
majority are
things,
you in to say that slavery
the
is a
goal of a
choice?
university.
What the hell?
The goal of a university is to teach people
Welcome to the
how
show,
to think, to teach them critical thinking skills, logical reasoning skills. It is not to teach them what to think. At our universities, history is becoming more of an opinion rather than just telling people all the bad and the good that happened
You
in
have
this
to tell both
country.
sides. Hey, Adam,
So
just really
you
quickly, I know
said
we're winding down
critical.
and everything, but I do have a quick question for Travis before I bring up this statement
I
and
did.
everything. But I would actually
I said
argue
critical.
against you on one thing that you said, because like I said, I literally live around
Yeah,
the
go
corner
for it.
from Duke and have friends at both Central State and UNC and everything. And I know for a fact that there are both liberal and conservative professors. So to say that it is a majority, even in certain departments, agenda, I cannot agree with that,
Look
because
at
I've
the
seen some
empirical
people that are
studies.
on both sides of the
There's
political
active
lanes that are
discrimination
teaching these
against
folks.
conservatives.
Huh?
There isn't. There isn't.
It's clear as day that there's active
No,
discrimination.
no, there isn't actually active, because the majority. Hold on. I was getting back to Adam's point,
Let me finish my
because
sentence.
we don't care about you. So Adam,
I care
Now,
about
you
him.
said-
He just discriminated
you
against me.
said-
That's not very nice to
Hush,
do.
hush, shush.
Oh, yeah, you
Thank you.
shush.
So in terms of when you keep going back to there's active discrimination against conservatives, yet the conservatives are the ones that are actively trying to ban things. Ban books such as things around history of minorities, history of the LGBTQIA community. And these books being banned are majority on those subjects. So those aren't progressive subjects. They're subjects that teach about history that many people in the conservative movement do not like, about how slavery was and how it was not a positive for slaves, which is what, again, is being pushed by the
Right.
conservative movement.
What you're saying is not mutually exclusive. I don't agree with banning books that teach certain historical perspectives. At the same time, there's active discrimination against conservatives in hiring, and the very people that claim to be champions of diversity, equity, inclusion are often the ones engaging in exclusion, discrimination against various groups of people. And you see that with segregated housing. You see it by saying white people are oppressors, these blanket, ridiculous statements. If you want to have harmony in this country, you have to have a common set of values that recognizes that diversity is only strong when we have a common set of values.
Adam,
that
just really
respect
quickly, what do you say to those that
as individuals and not members of groups?
Because even though Steve's not here, there are a number of times that when Indians move into communities, including here in North Carolina, they will self-segregate because they want to be around, ironically, one of the points that Shaquille sometimes makes and everything, they want to be around people that are similar culture to them and everything. So they will sometimes self-segregate. So what are your
And
thoughts
Mark,
around
you're right.
that?
And people also self-segregate into professions. That doesn't mean that a profession is sexist. Just because the majority of people in nursing are women doesn't mean nursing is sexist, or because the majority of bricklayers are men doesn't mean that it's a sexist profession. People self-segregate, and that is why when we talk about disparities, it's not often the result of discrimination. It's the result of more complex factors that we need to entertain if we're going to have an intelligent society.
So even in that self-segregation,
good question for Travis, but to that point, you're saying that there are not redlining districts and that there are not ranking biases even in the 21st century, and that there is not gentrification, including, like I said, I work in an area that used to be historically a very prominent African American community. It is now being very gentrified, and a lot of people are moving in that neighborhood that are not of the original history of that neighborhood. And there are some people that are upset to seeing more Europeans in that community, particularly if they don't understand the history of what they are moving into. So they would like them to have at least an understanding of their history and of the history of that neighborhood. Not saying that they can't change the neighborhood or even change the complexity of the neighborhood.
I think the history is very important because you learn lessons from history. So going on to my comments about the people who use labels to treat people, a lot of the people who actually do fall into those traps is because those beliefs are actually reinforced by their parents or their role models. So let's say you get raised by your grandfather who just happened to be a Polish citizen back in 1935 and actually went through a Nazi concentration camp. Do you think he's going to have a positive outlook towards German people because of his personal experience? Probably not. So what's happening is he's going to share that belief with his charges, so grandkids, kids, nephews, and all that sort of stuff. So the chances are of those kids, without even realizing it, that there's going to be that, Germans might be bad. Should we talk to them? So that's something that is we've got as adults, we've got to step up to the plate. Whether they're our kids or someone else's kids, we need to be that guiding light, that role model. So to turn around and to say that there isn't that in society, it is there. I just personally think the people who are too narrow-minded to actually look at past people's skin colors and past the accident of their birth, that I don't want anything to do with those sort of people. Like, I make a personal choice. I will only associate with people who treat other people correctly. You don't have to associate with anyone. So if there's someone who doesn't value my beliefs, or someone that I know of is openly racist or discriminatory towards someone because of the accident of someone's birth, sorry, I won't do business with them. I won't go to their shops. It's a personal choice that I have to make. Now, if my neighbor turns out to be a raging homophobe, hates trans people and all that sort of stuff, and I don't want to live next to that person, easy, I'll sell my house and I'll move somewhere else. Like, it's not that hard. People got to start taking ownership for their own lives and stop blaming other people, especially on the accident of their birth. And it's in every aspect. So let's say you go for a job and all of a sudden you find out one of your workers just happens to be a skinhead and he's got a little mo here and he's about yay tall. So do you want to keep working out that place? Do you still want to keep associating with those people? No, go get another job. Unemployment in Australia is about 3%. Like, they are screaming for workers. To put that into perspective, as an amateur handyman, I'm charging $75 an hour to paint a wall. That's more than what qualified tradespeople are getting because they just can't get people to do the work. There's a massive lack of workers at the moment. So, and if you're so narrow-minded, knowing that you need workers, but, oh no, you're from that minority, so I'm not going to hire you, you've just cut out so much of your workforce. You just put yourself so far behind the 8 ball. It's okay. You'll be bankrupt in a couple of years anyway. It doesn't matter. You don't matter. I'm not interested. Go away, sort of thing.
Hey,
But the
Travis,
other
just
thing
really
that
quickly,
people,
and then Toby has a point that he wants to make as well. But Travis, just really quickly, one of the things that's happened in the United States, and Shaquille might have some thoughts around this as well, is that there are people that have those jobs like you have. You mentioned being a handyman and everything, and there are, even in our various communities, including African American and European communities, folks that won't take those jobs because they feel that those jobs are under them and belittling them and all in that space. So, Travis, what is your thoughts around that? Because there is sometimes people that will see those jobs, because I agree that vocations are very important. I've got some relatives that were plumbers and all along those lines and everything. But sometimes people will think of these jobs as being less than them. They won't even go for the jobs because they're not realizing the amount of money.
No, definitely not in Australia. Okay, so to put it into perspective, so out of the trades, let's say one of the jobs that you actually work in in a constant daily basis as a plumber. So who do you think would earn more money, a plumber or a university professor in Australia?
Probably the plumber.
Oh, way more, about 40% more. Even if they're a head of department, plumbers start on about $150,000 a year. If they can be bothered working, say, every second Saturday or something, that can push $200,000 to $300,000 a year, not a problem. They get so many tax deduction and everything thrown at them. So to turn it's in Australia, I don't know if America's the same with the university fees and everything like that. By the time an apprentice goes through the system, Like if you're an electrician, you're earning even more money. It's absolutely retarded how much money tradespeople and truck drivers. You know, you do a 2-day course, you're a truck driver, you're instantly on like $200,000 a year. So universities are actually starting to get frowned upon in Australia, because if someone comes out and goes, "Oh, I'm a teacher," great, you're on $65,000 a year.
Yes,
I'm Centrelink with 4 kids. I'm on $45,000 a year. So why the hell would I go to university for 4 years, have a $200,000 debt, even before I buy a house, when I can just pump out 4 kids and then I'm owning nearly the same amount of money?
But
Australia is such a welfare country. It's ridiculous.
But
So,
Travis, isn't part of the problem that sometimes people are pushed into those jobs without the skills and everything? I get around, many people know this on the network and everything, by the bus and everything. And there was a push to get people to drive the bus. And when I talked to some of the veteran bus drivers, they're like, some of these new people don't need to be driving the buses because they have not been adequately
how much are
trained,
they getting
even though
paid?
the money is very high what they're asking them for. I think it's starting like around 60,000 is some of the incentives that they want to start them at and everything along those lines. But they are asking them to come and drive the bus. But some of these folks haven't even driven a school bus and everything. So some of these established drivers are going like, hold on a second. That's why we're having all these accidents that we don't need to be having.
We don't have that problem in Australia because our bus drivers are actually really, really well paid. To earn $60,000 a year, you work part-time 10 hours a week in McDonald's and you're on $65,000 a year. So there was this, like, it's, especially in Australia, there's no excuse for someone to be poor in Australia. Like, our welfare system is insane. It is absolutely crippling our economy. Like, we've got so much debt because we keep pumping so much money into our welfare, especially after COVID. It's per capita, it's nothing compared to America. Like, you guys just went retard on that one. But in Australia, it's so easy to get ahead. Like I said, if you just stop drinking or drink in moderation, don't smoke, it's easy. Like, I know an Uber driver that clears in the hand after tax. So this is Uber delivering people's food. They're on $1,500 a week. Like, how many university lecturers, I'll throw this to Adam, how many university lecturers pull in $1,500 a week in the hand?
Zero.
After taxes? So you can drive a car listening to your music or listening to pod TV on the radio whilst you're driving around, or you can go do 60, 70 hours marking tests, dealing with idiots idiot students. I don't believe adults grow up till they hit about 25. And before that, they're all children. They're a little bit special. Why would you put yourself in harm's way, especially at the US schools? Isn't there a school shooting every other week or something? So anyway, just going back to sorry, I'm just digressing here. The question about the progressive the teachers, the professors and all that. So there was an article on, I think it was the New York Post. I'll put it in the chat so everyone can go have a look at it. There's a couple of stats here. 81% of conservative professors say they feel discriminated against. Even 30% of liberal professors agree that conservatives face a hostile ideological workplace. Only 7 to 11% of faculty members in social science and humanitarians are Republicans, according to the survey. So that was back in 2019. So it might have been 16 actually. So it's been an ongoing problem in the schools. But this falls. It doesn't matter whether your professors, again, like different people migrate to, like your personality types, you'll migrate to different areas. So if you love technology, you'll probably go into a business that's IT minded or computer minded or as a very technical thing. You're not going to end up as a nurse. So it's what your interest is where you're going to end up. So with professors, they love helping people. They're very nurturing people. So people like that end up nursing, doctors, professors, educators, teachers, carers, things like that. So it's more about the personality type, not who they are. Now, it doesn't matter if your lecturer is on the left side of politics or the right side of politics. As a parent, I should be responsible. When my kids come home, I should say, hey, my daughter Celeste, hey Celeste, how was school today? Oh, that's fantastic. So what did you learn? And actually have an active role in the education. All right, let's bust out the books. Let's do some homework while you're here. There's not enough male interaction with the kids' upbringing. There's not enough female interactions with the kids' upbringing, and we're putting it into institutions to teach our kids, which isn't a right thing because they're not learning how to be good parents. They're not learning how to be good members of society. The education system should not be having that role, and it's a massive failure from the education side of things, and it's also a failure from the parental side of things, because unfortunately in America, from what I'm seeing from the outside looking in, there's too much of a focus on other things. Like, how much money are you guys spending on your military? Like, I get you need a strong military, but why aren't you pumping some of that money into making it easier for parents to be a part of your children's lives? How much money are you guys giving out in foreign aid? Like things like that.
I know because you had a point.
I personally don't agree with you on that, Travis. I think the US.
Yeah, we've had those discussions before.
Well, just really quickly to be fair, because Kevin doesn't know him and everything. Jacoby has actually worked on some of these issues and everything. He's actually worked with trying to get kids involved in the spaces of learning and all in that space. So he actually runs a center that deals with esports and a number of other things. So he does try to get kids involved into that lane that you're talking about. So you don't know him, so I wanted you to hear a little bit of that from his standpoint.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, I mean, Travis, a lot of this stuff we agree on. I mean, tremendously in terms of, the parents themselves not being involved as much as they can, but also the parents don't have the opportunity to be involved because they're always on the go because of the way, as you even pointed out, many of these parents went to college. Many of these parents have such debt that they have to deal with that it's impossible for them to have that opportunity because the hours that they have to put in at the job just to be able to pay the bills so the kid can have at least a little bit of food, because statistically it's proven that a kid can't learn when he's starved. So then you have those lower to middle income families that are struggling to make ends meet and struggling to pay to get those children fed, and those kids can't even, it's a downward spiral that we've got our own education problems, and that's what goes into
education problems. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that's why, and it wasn't a facetious question talking about history. And I completely agree that it shouldn't matter if you're liberal or conservative or progressive or whatever in terms of what your politics are as a teacher, because you have your stuff that you should be able to teach, and you should be teaching that information. And this is, the question about history wasn't facetious, because there are some tremendously bad things that had happened in our history. And I think that and this is where parents not being involved become so hyperactive in our problem and create another problem within our school system by making those same teachers that are not only underpaid and underappreciated.
Probably overworked is the biggest one. My wife used to work in the education department as a lab technician, so she did all the experiments for the students. I don't know in America, but we have a cap of 32 students per teacher. So the students are only getting about 10 minutes time with each teacher per day. First of all, each classroom should have teachers' assistants to help out with those little things. Oh, miss, how do you spell cat? So a teacher's assistant can do that while the teacher focuses on teaching. So it's just poor government regulations, again, over and over again.
Well, it's poor government regulation in the sense that we keep taking so much money out of that teaching system, because I don't know how it is in Australia with that, but in the States and especially in North Carolina, basically, we've taken so much money out of the system where we can't have teaching assistants. The only individuals that really have teaching assistants, because we have that 32 I think it's either 22 or 32 child cap as well. The only teaching assistants that go in are in the special needs classrooms. But even then, they have, I think it's an 11-person kid cap. So it's tough for the teacher, especially the special needs teacher. And then you don't have the extra, the after school programs that are getting chopped, the money that they have to take out of their pocket to pay for their own utensils that they have to use in schools. And I mean, it's a sad system that needs to be reformed and needs money to handle and appreciate these teachers more, because as you pointed out, not only are these teachers paid less, but then they have the tuitions that the student loans that they're having to pay back. That's just unrealistic for them on I think it's $35,000 that they start off with in North Carolina, which is ridiculous. You can get that job at Taco Bell or McDonald's. So it's unrealistic. But to get back to the point about the history thing, I think that's where we need to teach our histrionics, because a lot of that is due to the history, and we need to understand where our teaching and where our education system was and how it can improve and ways that we can improve. There are some things in history that we can learn from. There are some sad, and that's that good and bad about history. And this is where, Adam, like I said, I wanted to push back a little bit about, and I agree with Travis. It shouldn't matter if it's conservative, Republican, conservative, liberal, whomever is teaching the history, because our history is riddled with some bad things, and those bad things need to be exposed to create an empathy within our society so we can actually move past. And where, again, we completely agree, Adam, in terms of the chance of birth should not be a judgment upon the person. The chance of birth should be a celebration and a joyous thing that we teach about, hey, my culture and my history is about this. But no, we utilize it as a way to discriminate against each other and abuse each other. So if we can utilize it and twist it a different way by learning the history, yes, it is sad, the slavery thing. It is sad and atrocious about the Holocaust. It's sad and atrocious about these things in our history, but we can utilize those things to connect us in a different way, in a positive manner. So therefore we can say, hey, look, I learned this about this individual family that I'm going to spend Thanksgiving with, but I've also learned that the Native American people, I can't leave them out. And the reason we're celebrating Thanksgiving, it was due to the genocide of the Native American people. So we have to figure a way to celebrate the Native American people and remember the losses that they took over Thanksgiving, as well as the things that came from Thanksgiving and the way that it's morphed into a celebration of people getting together and a way that families can connect and re-engage. So we just have to become empathetic to the past so we can move towards a positive future. So we aren't judging that chance of birth issue, because again, Travis, we completely agree there, but it's just a matter.
Most people aren't like you. Most people do not have that perspective of, let's teach history as a way to create empathy and to help bring us together. What I see at universities is people telling students, you're an oppressor or you're oppressed. They're dividing people
But I don't
based
see that.
on race and identity. You're not doing that.
No. What I'm saying is you see that from your perspective. I don't see that from my perspective. So this is where it comes down to the middle
It's in the
ground.
policy guidelines of universities. You see it at like University of Central Florida, University of California, San Francisco.
What does the actual policy say?
That people who are white, able-bodied Christians are oppressors. And when you're dividing people on the basis of race,
No, is that what the policy says?
I can send it to you.
Yeah. Because if that's what the policy says, yes, that's a problem. But if that's not what the policy says and that's what you're interpreting, that too is the issue. So that's where, again, we have to come together and figure exactly.
Right, but that's exactly what the policy says. And that's why I said most people are not going to have your approach. They have a more ideological approach and a more categorical approach that divvies up people based on race and divides people based on what their race is, whether they're oppressed, whether they're privileged. And that's not teaching history, that's teaching division. And that's the problem I have.
Well, again, thinking about history based around and there's another thing about touchy race subjects. And this is why, that critical thinking that you were talking about earlier, and looking at, honestly, critical race theory is not a bad thing to teach, but it's got demonized into a point where everybody thinks it's something that it's not. It is that critical thinking that we're talking about in the conversation that we're having. So, for example, there are privileges of being tall. There are privileges of being skinny. There are privileges that come along with being beautiful. Why we assume or why we go into this corner that there aren't privileges of being white. No, there are. There really are. And there are a lot of privileges. And we've talked about a lot of the stuff about how we coalesce around individuals that look like us.
There's for every privilege you have, a person also has a disadvantage. People are more complex than that, okay? A white
Okay, the NFL, the majority want to grab.
who comes from a single family and grew up in poverty. So you can't make these broad statements about race. And when you talk about critical race theory, fine, you want to teach critical race theory at university, do that. But I also want you to teach students what the criticism of critical race theory is. I want them to be exposed to all perspectives, because diversity, if it means anything, is exposing people to both perspectives so that
And
they
that-
can
that-
decisions.
We're not in a disagreement on that, because we've got, and this is why I'm against banning books, and that's why this whole conservative movement I'm wholeheartedly against, because
one of the
not only are institutions and schools supposed to be places of learning and conversation where people can actually be able to have a conversation, we forget about that. So these books that are there in a library should not be banned. If a kid wants to check out a book about two penguins being dads raising a child, that's a reality that happens in real life. It's okay to talk about it. And that's where again, I don't like the pushback and the banning of, well, it should always be. Nobody's being forced to read particular books, but it's nice if they do, because we've got to have conversations, and we've got to have these serious conversations and be able to admit things. Again, like I said, with critical race.
I think that most people agree on what we're saying. That definitely the diversity of views. The quick question I was going to ask, and I hope Shaquille does come back, but this is for you, Travis. One of the things, because I don't oftentimes get to hear people that are from media, fellow media people that are from other parts of the world and everything. Here in the United States, a lot of the media is very much dominated by a few monopolies and all along those lines. So I wanted to know if that was the same thing going on in the area of Australia, because down here in the States, a lot of the media is controlled by a few selected entities, and that's why you can go to Los Angeles and hear the same Taylor Swift song in Los Angeles almost at the same time that you hear it in New York City or North Carolina. So I was wondering, did y'all have those same kind of issues with the media there, where it is very commercial driven and certain entities are driving the conversation?
Oh, definitely. So what happens, I'm going to mention WA because I know WA media. So Western Australia media is more than over east. So pretty much everything that's not Western Australia is over east, because it's all to the east of us. So Channel 7, we used to have anti-monopoly laws within media. So you couldn't own print, TV, and radio, all three. So you could only own two. You couldn't own the third. So what happened is that got abolished. Shaq will be able to tell you what year that was. But Channel 7 brought out every single newspaper, radio station, TV station, network. So pretty much about 90% of all media consumed in Western Australia is owned by Channel 7. So all your local newspapers are owned by Channel 7. All your local radio stations are all owned by Channel 7. It's such a echo chamber of one story. It's very, very rare for things to get out. And I think that's half the reasons why Edge Radio has been really successful in WA. There's another one called Freedom Media WA is also very, very successful in WA. WAMN News is another, we call them alternative media because they're not a part of the mainstream media. But even the problem is some of these alternative media ones are still not, they still toe the line. Like if Channel 7 is reporting this, we'll do the same so they don't alienate us. We had, and I'll tell you a personal story. I was a radio presenter at a community broadcasting station, 89.7 FM over in Joondalup, which is a northern suburb of Perth. So I had a show called Carter's Corner. And to put it into perspective, Channel 7's talkback radio show was called 6PR. And so they were getting about 50,000 listeners per show. My show was getting up to about 150,000 listeners per show. And so the head of Qantas, our airline, decided to fire 3,000 workers like in end of November, like just before Christmas. And I thought that was a bit of an arsehole thing to do. His name's Alan Joyce, so I may or may not have called him Anal Joyce by accident. So, yeah, and yes, that's a true story. So I actually didn't know he was homosexual. And so obviously the boss cracked the shits at me, told me off. I got suspended for a week and came back. So at that point, Channel 7, who just happens to be the head of Channel 7, was really good friends of Alan Joyce. So they sent Channel 7 to do a investigation into every single show that we ever did. They sat there and they watched through about 360 hours worth of footage to make a 3-minute article. They then took that to the local councils because they provide the funding for the station, and then they pressured the local councils, threatening to remove all sources of funding for the radio station unless they fired me. So I was the 6 o'clock headline news act 2 nights in a row. So if someone says something about someone in WA that Channel 7 doesn't like, or someone who's connected to Channel 7, you will get deplatformed immediately. And then they'll go after your businesses, they'll go after your family members, and it doesn't stop. So that's why we call them the media mafia over here. So actually, that reminds me. So there was a question earlier about the mafia in Italy. If you really want to see some real mafia, the Japanese Yakuza are amazing, like really bad, but amazing. The Vietnamese Triads are another one that they do a lot of criminal activity. The Australian Bikies is another one. The mafia side of things isn't just Italy. It's just we call it different things in different countries. So there's gangs and criminal organizations all over the place. There was a TV series talking about underground crime, and they were doing all the different countries and all the different gangs there. And each so Italy had one season thing, then they did America, they did Japan and all that, and then they came to Australia. So the thing you've got to remember, Australia was pretty much founded, you took all the criminals from England and then sent them to Australia, said, oh, go set up shop over there. You're free for all, do what you want. So Australia's national hero is a guy called Ned Kelly, who was famous for robbing banks, wearing a trash can on his head and shooting police. So we're a bunch of criminals. Even my lineage, if we trace it back, I'm also a criminal by history. We idolize criminals. It's not like if you see someone breaking into a corner deli store, we'll laugh about it and then we'll go to stop it because we think crime's funny over here. Like, not in a bad way, as long as it's not a major crime like killing someone or rape. But if you rape someone in jail, you'll go get your head stomped in. When I was working I'm a retailer by trade before I got into the housing industry, we couldn't get workers. So I used to rehabilitate people coming out of jail. So you hear about some of the stories they do in jail. It's we don't sugarcoat things. If you do something nasty to a kid or an elderly person, you will die in jail. There's no if, buts, maybe. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, green, homosexual, whatever. You hurt a kid or you hurt the elderly, you will die in jail. It's just one of those things.
Hey, Travis, just really quickly, and I hope Shaquille comes back to this question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts because he's brought up, and actually Jatovia alluded to it earlier, the Native American rights and all along those lines. And I know y'all had that big discussion around the Aborigines, and I was just wondering, how is the conversation with the Native people there in Australia in your perspective? I've heard Shaquille's perspective about that whole proposition and all along those lines, but how are the Native populations treated? You heard Jatovia, and there are some times that even when there are shows that are done, they will honor the land of which we stand on, which is the land of the Native Americans, and that will be even part of some of the rituals of performances where people will acknowledge the fact that they are on the land of the Native people and everything. But I just wanted your take on Native rights. So
Native, the term Indigenous pretty much means the land you were originally from. So in Australia, they try to push this thing, same as what Canada did. They call them First Nation people, which is not true. They're not a nation. They're not grouped together. It's actually over 500 different tribes all fighting and warring amongst themselves for different lands. So where I grew up in Geraldton, which is about 4.5 hours north of Perth, is Yamaji land. So just south of Yamaji, just south of Geraldton near Eneabba is where it changes from Yamaji land to Noongar land. So the Noongars and the Yamajis have a blood feud with each other. So if they see each other in the street, they will try to kill each other there and then, whether the police are there or not. It's insane. There's constantly murders and deaths, and it's getting to the point where, especially in some of the outback communities, you just let it go. Because if you try to get involved, they'll just hurt everyone. You just let them go, let them do their thing, and just go for it. The other thing, a lot of people in the cities try to make rules for the people that live in the communities. We still have Aboriginal communities that don't want houses. They're nomads. They go from area to area. They legitimately live off the land. So this might be hard for you guys to understand. We have entire states where there's 2 people per square mile. That's how many people, how densely our populated our area is. You can go 6-7 hours driving in a straight line and not see another person because there's just no one there. Like, you can get lost for weeks and weeks and weeks on end and just not see anyone. You can't see telephone lines, you won't see airplanes, you won't see roads. We are literally a country, there's nothing here. So what's happening, we're getting all these people from the cities going, oh, these people need 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses when there's no water up there, there's no electricity. And the Aboriginal people, they don't want that. They just want shelters where they can cook the kangaroo that they caught, or somewhere to keep their woodgiddy grubs. So that's a bug that you pull out of the park and eat it while it's still alive. It tastes a little bit like chicken. So what happened is a lot of the Aboriginal people, it's called dream time or story time. It's how they pass on their stories. They've got no written language. It's white people actually created a written language for them. So their story is, when you get pregnant on their land, what happens, a part of the land actually goes into your stomach, and that's what creates the baby. So because I was born in Australia, I'm actually part of the land. So I'm actually, by their own story, like depending on which tribe, I'm actually Aboriginal as well, even though all my descendancies are Eastern European, Burmese, Eastern Asian. Believe it or not, yes, I'm slightly Asian. So you've got people making rules for people who don't even live in the area. They don't even know anything about them. Like, we have tribes where they can't even talk to each other. And yet what happened with the referendum into the voice, that's what they call it. They tried to get 24 people to make rules and decisions for over 500 different groups of people. It was very similar to what the UN is trying to do for the rest of the world. Like, not everyone is represented in the UN, but the UN is trying to make laws for everyone. It just doesn't work. You need to have representations from every single group of people. And a vast majority of these people don't care. Like, and I'm not saying that to try and be racist or anything like that. They legitimately don't care. There was a fight in Darwin, which is in the Northern Territory of WA. A lady, I don't know if this is going to get censored, but it's a major problem where kids are dying. So there was a 4-year-old child that got diagnosed with syphilis. So that child was getting sexually molested as a 4-year-old child. So how the hell can you allow that to happen? How can the parents allow that to get by? So the voice, what happens, they go, all right, there's a problem here. Let's get heaps of money. And then all these Aboriginal organisations suck all the money out, and nothing actually gets down to the ground where they need to get help. We've got Aboriginal people that are actually starving to death because they can't get food. There's people that are like dying from the lack of water. There was another situation where there was 2 tribes started a war with each other, and one of the Aboriginal women were actually grabbing a baby by the legs. This kid was less than a year old and was using the baby as a weapon. We're trying to hit other people with this baby. The baby died, unfortunately. So this is an extremely common thing up there. And these Aboriginal communities, there's no white people in these communities. It's the Aboriginal police that are trying to separate all these people from each other. In a lot of these regional areas, it's an absolute war zone. And the voice would not fix it. The politician Albanese, who tried to push it forward, gave us no details of how it was going to work, no indication of how it would work with our constitution, and there was just no information on it. So what it was the ability, and this is where the big danger was. We're constantly getting people trying to get to influence Australia, but the Australian Constitution is actually very, very well written. It stops a lot of that. So our Constitution sets out the powers of each of the House of Parliament, who can do what, and what laws they can set up. So what happens is this voice was actually a massive sidestep to the Australian Constitution, which would allow a non-elected group of people to actually make laws within Australia. So the Australian Constitution would become rubbish. It wouldn't even be worth having it. So that's why it got voted down, and over 60% of Australians voted against it. Now, I can see Jatovi going, what about the Aboriginal people? Over 80% of Aboriginal people voted against it as well.
No, actually, that's not what I was. I was actually thinking how related that was to actually what happens in the States, because the Native American population makes their own laws and has their own lands. So, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of the correlation between what happened there and actually the Native American population here. That's the only thing that popped in my mind.
Effectively, you've got 2 countries within one country in that situation, because if Native Americans can make their own laws within one area, it's sort of like it throws out what's going on. So I think it's Nevada or Nebraska where they have all the casinos.
Mm-hmm.
As my understanding is, as long as it's on Indian land, you're allowed casinos. But the rest of the country is not allowed to have a casino. So to me, that straight away is building a divide between Native Americans and everyone else, whether you're black, white, Asian, whatever. So if you're Native American, you get all these different rules. I'm not going to say privileges because I don't know if they're privileges or not. Because in Australia, our constitution is very based on, if you are an Australian citizen, everyone has the same rights. And so there was a big I won't say uprising in the early 90s. My mum was a single mother, went through domestic violence. I actually had 7 different names because the police kept moving us because my father was out of control on he was a professional bodybuilder. So testosterone made him crazy. So we got moved around a lot as a kid. So what happens in that situation? So single mother, three boys that she's trying to raise on her own, drug problems in the family, domestic violence. So everything you say that all these different minorities are disadvantaged because they have that. As a white guy, I had all those sort of things. We literally had no money rubbed together. To get me to school, they used to put me into, my oldest brother's 9 years older than me. They used to put me into a bike seat, but I was too big for it. So the seat used to push down onto the tire and it actually used to burn my butthole because riding to school, there's no other way I could get to school. So I'm very grateful to my oldest brother for actually taking the time and making sure I got to school so I could get the education. The point is, just because I'm white doesn't mean I'm privileged. Just because my mum's white doesn't mean she's privileged. Just because she's white doesn't mean she goes through domestic violence. Just because someone's a skin color, just because the accident of their birth, it doesn't mean that they're in an advantaged position or the disadvantaged position. It's just how the family reacts in that situation. Because we look at Muggsy Bogues, was a drug dealer as a kid. He got shot when he was a teenager, and he ended up becoming an amazing, successful basketball player and had an amazing career, does some amazing things in society. So there are opportunities for people to get back and change their lot in life. You've got to make that conscious decision, right? I may not be able to fix my life because this is the hand that I've been dealt, but by God, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure every single child around me has the opportunity to get an education, to get ahead in this world, to have an equal opportunity to what everyone else has. There's always going to be disadvantages somewhere. So through my stupidity, I crashed a motorbike. So I couldn't walk for nearly 8 years. So I had spinal surgery and all that sort of stuff. So now I'm working again. So I lost 8 years of income. But during that time period, I was still able to buy 3 houses.
So just to point out again, and this is where it's tough to try and explain how there is an advantage. And in the U.S., I cannot say in Australia because I'm not there. And I do not understand. I do not have a full grasp of the culture and the histrionics there. So I cannot say that this is in Australia, but I can definitely say that this is in the States. And there was actually a individual that put together a video it was very well done. It was very well done. And yes, there are the majority of the individuals on welfare in the US, they're white individuals, children, white women. So saying all black people are on welfare is a lie, and that's not true. Honestly, that's part of the Southern strategy that got put into office, because that's what they were pushing, is that the whole welfare queen's idea was a buzzword to say these black people who are poor. And it was a misconception because people fell for, and this goes back to the whole education part of it, and which is why I always talk about education and always talk about histrionics and stuff like that, is because welfare has always had more white people on it than black people on there. But in our history, welfare queens was used as a buzzword to manipulate people that use that white angst and that anger and that agitation to vote for them. But that's where that whole thing came from. But what's the population difference between African Americans and whites? The African American population, I think, is at 13 or 14% now. The white population, I think, is at 55, and then you have 17% Hispanic, and then everything else in between there. So you have
would there be? So it's really funny when people go like, and this is one thing. So earlier I was saying I just wanted to talk to you about the Tiger Woods thing as well. This comes to this as well. This might be a little bit weird, Tiger Woods and welfare, but so what happens is with the comment that there's more white people on welfare. Yeah, so let's say there's 10 million people, 10 million white people on welfare, and there's 8 million black people on welfare. But what is the population per African American population? What's their percentage on welfare versus the population percentage? I think people should always be quoting these stats on percentage because it gives a truer representation. So going back to the Tiger Woods thing, saying just quickly, with those other golfers, there was no internet back in those days. I think they had black and white TV, but at the same time, not everyone had a TV at that time. Was the golf actually broadcast on TV, or did you just find out about their results when you read the newspaper? So it's really hard to compare the influence of Tiger Woods, who's on 24-hour media coverage, TV, radio, newspaper, every form of social media, versus someone where maybe once a week is in the newspaper. It's really hard to compare who's got more influence when you don't
I hate to push back on that really quick. I hate to push back on that, but I have to. You're saying that the Tiger Woods benefited only because of the internet? Because when did he start?
It's not just the internet, it's the TV, it's the radio.
So
the amount of media coverage that he received. We see it in everything. So in Australia,
why did he receive that? Because he was number one in the world. He was dominating golf and doing everything else, right?
Yeah.
Vijay Singh was playing at that time. Vijay Singh was actually doing really well. Vijay Singh then retired and went into the senior tour.
But you're comparing someone who's on the stats. Tiger Woods is number 3 most influential. The other two
I was getting to that point. So again, Vijay Singh was still there. TV and internet were around with Vijay Singh. Vijay Singh could have had internet and wait. I got to get to the point.
Vijay Singh. You're comparing like a different person.
Wait. You just said that the internet wasn't around when these other black players were playing.
No, Jatovi. I said the internet wasn't around with Carl Pete and Lee Elder, not BJ Singh. You said BJ Singh, not me.
But BJ Singh's not a black golfer?
I wasn't talking about BJ Singh.
No, but I just pointed out to you.
Yes, I get what you're saying, but Jatovi, the stat I'm talking about, they did a top 20 plus black golfers and who were the best players at the time and the most influential. Number 3 was Tiger Woods. Number 2 was Calvin Pete. And number
where does this come from?
This is on rankings.com. So you can go have a look for it yourself.
So you're saying, let me ask you real quick. Let me ask you.
Internet around. Calvin Pete was like in the 1970s.
So these individuals that you're saying that, one, the internet wasn't around and they weren't anything, and yet now you're saying that, they're so ranked high because this area ranked them so high and Tiger Woods wasn't really anything. You can't have it both ways, Travis. You're arguing that
you were the one that's trying to bring in BJ Singh into this one. I wasn't talking about BJ Singh. There's heaps of really great golfers. The point was there's a lot of really great golfers who started to. Why did Tiger Woods start playing?
Travis, if you go to the NBA Finals, LeBron James is the MVP of the Finals. Is he the best player on that team?
What?
Yeah.
He's not the GOAT, though.
Yes.
Michael Jordan's the GOAT, easily.
In golf, if you have a player that people watch, if he's in the tournament, people legitimately watch, he brings millions and billions to golf. You're saying that he's not as influential as these guys nobody ever really heard of.
So how do people find out about Tiger Woods?
Travis, listen to what I'm saying.
So how do they find out about Tiger Woods?
This individual who brings golf millions and billions, and the world watches his son play and cheered his son on. Mm-hmm. Everybody has cheered this man on from his life. Everybody has movies about this dude. You're saying he's not that influential in golf. But these two people that know, you just said that.
No, I didn't. I said there's other people that are more influential.
There's an article. What I'm saying.
So,
Hold on,
Anyway,
so just to
why-
change it just really
why-
quickly and everything.
Come on,
Just to
Travis.
change it really quickly. Travis, so are you saying that Althea Gibson, who was a major African American tennis player, would have as much influence as, say, the Williams sisters and everything? Because she was definitely around at a time when she didn't get the kind of notoriety that, say, the Williams sisters do and everything. But she was a pioneer in tennis. Althea Gibson was in, I think, like the 50s or something like
would
that.
you say her play style is as exciting as the Williams sisters?
No, it's more traditional.
You're
Yeah,
trying to, no, Travis,
Is it-
this is the
No,
problem.
it's not,
This
because
is
you
the- hold on,
can't
hold on.
just.
Let me explain.
Okay, go
Now,
for it.
this is the problem.
You're wrong, but go for it.
No, I'm not. It's because you're trying to make a very disingenuous argument. We know
No.
for a fact.
Ooh, that's a
Here
big word,
is
Greg. You're putting words in my mouth now.
factually speaking, who
Yeah.
sells more T-shirts, Tiger Woods or the other two on that list?
They're massively retired. They didn't even have.
Who
shirts
sells
when they were-
more T-shirts right now? Who
You
said
can't
we?
even
You just
compare that. Why
how
would
do
you compare that?
you just said that they're more influential. If they're more influential,
Your comment. What started this whole thing?
you
said Tiger
legitimately
Woods was
said
a
they're more
nice
influential 3-4 times.
pioneer for black
Who
golfers
is-
to play more golf.
Here, let's
That was
clear
your
it up,
argument.
Travis.
That's the argument.
Travis,
So
let's
my
clear it up
argument
then.
was that
Travis,
he was not the
Travis,
pioneer.
let's clear it up.
Tiger Woods
Let's
is
clear
not
it
the
up.
pioneer.
Let's stop the disingenuous argument. Who
God,
is
you
more
love to talk to
influential?
people.
Who is more influential in your opinion out of those top 3 golfers? You tell me who's more influential.
The
Right
argument
now.
was who was
Who's
the
more
pioneer.
influential?
You
I'm
made
asking
the
you a
claim
question.
Tiger Woods was the pioneer. So you've
Who
gone, oh, I
is
can't fight this one, so I'm going to just
influential?
modify it.
Who is more influential right now?
It's a
Thank you.
non-comparison.
Then why are we
can't
arguing?
compare any of them.
Why are we arguing when we agree that Tiger Woods is the most influential right now? Why?
That's right. Now, see again. So
Again, when Tiger came out, when Tiger Woods came out, Travis, when Tiger Woods came out, who was more influential? Was it those two or was it Tiger? Who got a Nike contract?
They weren't even around.
No, hold on
Nike
a
wasn't
second,
even around.
Jacoby, hold on a second. Travis, just really quickly. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding the argument from everybody's perspective and everything. I think that what Jacoby is trying to say, and I hate putting words in people's mouths and everything, but I think the argument is that Tiger Woods, and I hear what you're saying, Travis, is partially because of what he had at his disposal, is that while Calvin Peets and Lee Elders were great golfers, that they did not necessarily get the kind of notoriety and the kind of presence that then encouraged people to go into the game. The same thing can be argued about the tennis of the Williams sisters, because a lot of people started getting into tennis after the Williams sisters. A lot of people started getting into gymnastics after Deborah. I'm trying to remember Deborah's last name, but she was like an influential African-American gymnast and everything along those lines. So I think one of the arguments is that after they come into the field, that it encourages others to think about going into those sports because they are thinking that that is something that they can become champions in, where they might not have heard about it. The black press did exist in the time of Calvin Peets and Lee Elders, but that is a niche market, so they didn't get as much exposure, is what I think.
Spot on. So it is a niche market. So the point that I'm raising here is how much coverage did Tiger Woods and the PGA as a whole have at that time versus when these other African American players were playing? You can't compare the two. It's like having someone with a shovel digging a hole who works really, really hard. Just wait, please wait. And then you get someone with an excavator that comes along, starts digging a hole. So who works harder?
So just to your point.
So the guy with the shovel is working harder, or the guy with the excavator?
Just to your point,
so
as you point out,
say one thing. You can't just take this one little part. Yes, Tiger Woods is an amazing player.
But Travis, that's what you're doing.
Player.
No, Travis, that's what you're doing. We're talking about influence and driving people to the game. You just pointed out two individuals, and you even agreed that those individuals, one, didn't get the coverage, didn't get the press stuff. So therefore, they weren't pushing black people to play golf. They weren't.
Do you know that? Were they
Travis, we know this. If I can get to my point, then I can tell you how we know this for a fact. So again, you literally just admitted that these individuals did not get they played golf. They were black. They did not get the coverage that they had because it was not there. Therefore, a lot of black people did not go to golf because of them. That is a fact. And we know there was a spike in African American participation in golf as soon as Tiger Woods took off. We know the statistics and data on that. So therefore, to claim that, oh, well, these individuals, because they played before Tiger, they were the ones who really got black people to play. They didn't. You admit that they didn't have the same influence.
No.
The people
See,
are buying Tiger Woods clothes right now are the ones.
Yeah, let me explain this one to you, because I don't have to pull it all the way back to statistics and all that sort of stuff. So bear with me on this one, okay? Can you come with the journey, Toby? No, we're not, because you're still.
It is. No, that's what they talked about when Tiger came out.
Okay. One thing you'll learn about Australians, we'll put up with shit for a certain time, then we'll tell you to fucking shut up. Okay.
Okay, but you do the same thing to me, so I'm listening to you the same way.
Shut up for a minute.
Come on.
Okay. Let me hear Travis' this point.
Yeah, okay. So we got to bring it all the way back. Do you know what the reach of the PGA was when Cal Pete and these other African American players were playing? So what you have to do, if you want to have a look at the true influence between the two players, the PGA had already had a worldwide coverage. How many, like you can actually see, they've got statistics of it, on how many African American young kids Tiger Woods brought into the system. So you could take that over the entire system, right? With these other players, they had a much smaller pool of the community that they had access to. What percentage of those African-American kids started, instead of playing basketball, decided to start playing like golf? You can't answer that one. So how can you compare the two? Okay, show me the stats. Show me the stats, Toby. Show me the stats. How many
one of the things I'm curious about, because there's actually, and Toby knows what I'm going to bring up. There were actually folks that, I hear part of what you're saying, Travis, but there was a time of the baseball team, and by the way, Jacoby does a work as an announcer for one of our local baseball franchises, minor league team and everything. But there was a time that there was the Negro League and the mainstream major leagues and everything, and there are folks that, if I'm hearing you correctly, would say that some of those Negro League players were just as good as the Babe Ruths and everything else, but they might not have had the media coverage and all along those lines, even though they were great. And some of them even made it into the major league, but they were doing that kind of brainstorming tour. And to your other point, Travis, there is a popular club here and everything. My dad actually was part of it, called the Algonquin Club. And that's where there was a tennis club. There was an African-American tennis club in like the 50s and everything. So there were people that were learning tennis at that time and everything, and were very big on tennis. And it was a club that was in the African-American community that was drawing people into tennis that might not have had a natural interest in it until that club was a big club that was here in the area.
Just to point out, Mark, how they talk about, if you talk about the Major League Baseball did have a rise. They've had a fall in minority participation in Major League Baseball. There's statistics that show this. And that's, again, going through the histrionics of how the minority participation has dropped off in Major League Baseball. It's the same thing they do in every sport. And that's my point, is that you can gauge based on the histrionics that, yes, there was, even if you say, oh, well, the PGA only reached 1,000 people back in the day. Well, okay, let's tell Sam Snead and all the others that they only reached 1,000 people back in those days. But back in those days, also, African Americans weren't really allowed in particular places, so they couldn't even play. Therefore, African Americans wouldn't even play or even consider playing. So therefore, we just talked about how you even talked about how the Polish people, the Polish grandfather would tell his kids, you know, you shouldn't trust Germans. You shouldn't trust Germans. Well, what do you think happened in the African American community? Well, once they see that Tiger Woods even played in a place where he wasn't even allowed to play even the year prior, and he actually dominated and won, the spike in minority participation took off. We have the history behind it. And I know you don't want to accept that because that's why you're arguing against it, but it is part of our history. And that's talking about just being honest. And there's nothing wrong with that spike and just admitting it happened. I mean, we know for a fact, Arthur Ashe was the first African-American really to dominate and do his thing in tennis. They even have awards after him. But even his spike wasn't even close to the spike of the Williams sisters, because what they've done in tennis in terms of the minority communities, they created a spike. We can admit that. It's not actually besmirching, belittling, or doing anything to those that came before. It's just pointing out a fact. So again, there was a spike. You can look it up. Type in spike. What was the Tiger Woods spike in the minority population or the minority community? The effect on golf. It's there. All the data is there. Nike. The reason Nike stuck through Tiger Woods even when the adultery and the car crashes, the reason is because he's money. Everybody knows he's money. He has such a major influence. He's the first $1 billion athlete. Why? Because he has such a major influence. So we cannot just belittle that because, oh, well, these two people came before. So no, Tiger Woods didn't really do much. No, he did. He created a spike. And that spike is that's why I went with the analogy. The MVP of the finals who dominated throughout the whole year, if the MVP throughout the year and the MVP in the finals, you know what? If he was the MVP in the year and the MVP in the finals, you know what? He was probably the best player on that team.
Yeah,
And that's why, Tiger Woods.
Like I said, I don't like putting words in people's mouths and everything. But if I'm hearing you correctly, I think what Travis is saying is that you at least have to acknowledge the pioneers that came before and everything. So, like, acknowledge Satchel Paige and acknowledge Calvin Keith and all in that space, but acknowledge them as a trailblazer. They might not have had the same influence in terms of the money and bringing people in as a Tiger Woods, but I'm thinking, if I'm hearing you correctly, Travis, that you're just saying that you should acknowledge those people that were the trailblazers even before Tiger and all. And
I completely agree. They are trailblazers. They got in there. But again, in terms of
the whole argument was Tiger Woods wasn't the first.
Listen, I was never arguing that he was the first. I was arguing his influence on the game. I said that he brought
here, but I'm pretty sure you said he was the one that first brought the African community into golf.
What I stated, and then we had the discussion on, and remember in our discussion, I said I should never have used the term, the blanket statement, no one. I said no one in the black community was playing golf before Tiger Woods got there. And again, I admit my fault of using, I admit you just said that Australians would use the shut up term. So please let me finish.
I love that term, by the way.
Stated that again, I should not have used the blanket statement nobody because he was not the first. And I agree there were people before him. That's why I even brought in BJ Singh, because there were people before him. So what I stated and my wholehearted argument is, which I don't know why you keep arguing against, maybe this clarification can help. Again, he was the most influential that brought a spike in the minority community to the game. And that is a factor that cannot be denied.
Well, so that's the thing. That was never my argument.
By that same logic, if I'm hearing you correctly, we might see a spike, and Shaquille, who's now in the background, may agree with me. He might disagree, but we might see a spike in the minority participation after Obama was elected. And that might be why Hakeem Jeffries or somebody like that is now engaged in politics, because they saw that they had a opportunity. And there's even people that were looking at Hakeem as being a Senate leader. And I think that eventually he may get pushed into presidential politics. Not saying he's going to win, but he might get pressed into that because he now sees that there was somebody that achieved the goal.
And that brings me, I guess that brings us all full circle back to where Kim's question was hours ago, where she had asked, how important do you feel that, she's the first woman president of that country and so on and so forth. That's where the whole Tiger Woods argument came out of, because his influence that we now agree on that created a spike, and because of who he was, created a spike in minority participation in golf. He was the one who really pushed that out there. That is where the representation, what I said, representation matters, which I guess we should be able to agree in that sense, based on the Tiger Woods argument, that representation does matter.
Just really quickly, I see that I brought Shaquille back and everything. By the way, if I was not giving Shaquille enough time, it's because I had you, Travis. And sometimes there are new people I like to give them. I like to learn a lot about them. I like to learn a lot about them. So I do apologize, Shaquille, if I did not give you enough time. But you brought in Travis, and I was going like, hey, it's a new person. And when there are new people, I love interviewing them. That's what I do with a lot of the guests and everything. So if I cut you off or did not give you enough time, I apologize and all along those lines. But I was seeing Travis, and I'm like, hey, it's new blood, and I want to hear his perspectives and all along those lines. That's why I even went into the whole media conversation, because we are fellow media people.
I'll say something. Okay, never mind. Go, Shaq. You got quiet. Go.
Don't patronise me, Mark. I'll discuss this with you off air. But don't tell me that you interrupted me and let Jacoby keep going because of Travis. Okay, don't patronise me.
I was
Thank
not
you very
patronizing you. I'm just saying that if a lot of times, if you go back and watch past interviews, you will see that if there are new people, I spend a lot of time interviewing them,
That's correct,
talking to the guests and
Mark,
everything.
that's correct. That's correct. But you didn't interrupt me and cut me off in order to let Travis speak. Okay, I was cut off and interrupted to let Jatovi continue to speak.
I did not cut you off.
We'll discuss it.
I did not cut you off. If you were cut off, I did not cut you off.
On a more positive note.
When you won't let anybody interrupt your conversation with Adam, and you were allowed to be on with him by himself, you should just be quiet for a second and play by your own rules. All right?
I appreciate
I
Travis.
did not do that. That was either Nick or Kim that did the 2-on-2 thing. I did not create that.
Whatever. But the idea, if you're going to try and tell me that the reason why Jatovi was allowed to continue to speak after he directed something directly at me an hour ago and I wasn't allowed to respond at the time is because of Travis, don't patronize me. Okay? And frankly, gentlemen, both Jatovi and Mark, this is directed at you. Frankly, when I bring up issues that affect other minority communities, such as my own, which is a very small minority community within the world, and I point things out, and then you guys come back at me, and you'll say things on air and off air, things that imply that I'm an Oreo or a Lamington or something, I'm white on the inside, or that I don't care about.
You never heard me use that term with you. You've never heard me use that term at all.
Can I finish?
You never heard me use that term.
Can I finish?
Okay, go for it.
If the answer's no, just tell me it's no. If the answer's no, I can't, then just let me know that, okay, and I won't bother.
Go ahead. But
Go ahead.
I happen to think, just like the show that we did after the Supreme Court ruling came out about ending the discrimination against Asian, which Indians are counted in, and I just talked about why that really affects sub-minorities of the Indian community, because people like myself have nothing to do with India. Fijian Indians have nothing to do with India. We're so far removed from there. And I was laughed at and ridiculed and etc. by Jatovi on that entire show for 45 minutes. Don't you think that if you guys are going to sit there and tell all the white people that they should care more about black issues in America, that maybe one of the larger, not the largest, one of the larger minorities in the United States might want to just show a little bit of understanding as to what some of the smaller minorities go through without calling us names or ridiculing us or telling people like me that I don't care about these issues? Do you not think that that's something that you might consider doing? But show after show for over a year now, this has been going on. Now, Mark, you've seen how many followers I've got. So when this goes on show after show, I get emails from them going, hey, what about this? You didn't bring up this issue. Okay? You guys do not have the monopoly on victimhood. Not that I ever try to play one. Neither do you have the monopoly on being oppressed. There are a lot of other cultures that have been oppressed. Now, my culture and my people from my ethnicity were not taken as slaves. Slavery was far more brutal than anything that my family has ever experienced. However, indentured servitude and other types of things like that are similar. They're not as bad. They weren't as brutal, but they are similar. Okay? People who have been affected by that, like my family, find themselves not really even in contact with their own family that often because we've been strewn all over the world. There are all sorts of issues that affect us, and to be constantly talked down to and ridiculed as if somehow having a different perspective than the one that progressive American Democrats have is somehow some kind of slight against you is ridiculous and it's pathetic. And I think that you would be well served to stop that kind of behavior. And I'm mostly directing that at you, Jatovi, but I'm saying it to many other people that appear on this network that carry on like that.
Well, first off, and like I said, I have had folks that have had different views. I try to get people in different views and different things along those lines, and I don't always agree with everything that everybody says. I hear what you say, and I definitely agree, and I try to give you your voice as well. If there are times that other people on the network cut you off, because I'm not the only one that has control and everything. So like I said, when you said that one-on-one thing, I was not the one that did that and everything in that space. So I did see it go on, but I was not the one that was doing it at that particular time and everything. But I hear what you're saying about giving different voices. I mean, I just had a gentleman on yesterday that I was of Taiwanese background who is had a number of years in the business space. I'll actually introduce you to him at some point because he runs a company called Gizmo Spring and is a business leader in both Taiwan and China. And definitely we had some things that we did not agree on, but even around the nature. And there were some things that he did not want to talk about. And I gave him that respect because, as you have pointed out to me, and I'll even give people respect of where I've learned things from, that there are certain conversations that I might bring up that they might damage their business and everything. So when he told me yesterday, and I was interviewing this gentleman, that he did not feel comfortable talking about certain things within that China space, I backed off of the question because I was like, that's one of the things I learned from Shaquille, is that there are business deals that go on, and I respected what he was saying, so I didn't press the agenda. I could have pressed the agenda.
I haven't been on here for a while, up until a couple of days ago, right? Specifically because, and there's many other guests, and we'll discuss this off air, but specifically because I'm not happy with the way that I am treated lately and the way the show has been compared to what it used to be. Okay, I have asked both on air and off air for us to change this dynamic. Now, 2 days ago when I was on, there was a conversation that came up. We were talking about Israel and Palestine. Jacoby makes a statement that I don't care about human trafficking and child abuse. I go to respond to that and say that's not what I have ever said.
And I didn't say that.
Like that. Okay.
I didn't say that.
By the hosts.
I didn't say that.
That happened about the 20-minute mark. I had to wait.
I did not say that.
Okay, Jacoby, you said you didn't say it. Cool. We heard you the first 4 times.
Then please, if you heard me the first 4 times, don't say I said it.
I had to wait until the end of the show with 1 minute left to be able to respond to it. Okay. Then after I left the show, Jacoby turns around and says, oh, well, he must be worried because he might get in trouble for something. Okay.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, Jacoby, the show's on YouTube. You can go watch it. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I didn't say that.
Again, trying to kind of impugn my reputation, try to call into question my diplomatic credentials, saying earlier on the show, well, I guess Shaquille's not going to be welcome anymore at the United Nations. Well, guess what? I'm allowed to disagree with the statements made by the Secretary General of the United Nations. Or I'm allowed to disagree with many things that are said by the United Nations. Okay? Just because I've spoken at the United Nations, just because I've been to the United Nations on several occasions, doesn't mean that I have to toe the United Nations line. But I'm a little bit sick and tired of this kind of, this sort of sneering, you guys have the moral high ground type of thing on all of these issues, whether it be race, gender, or anything else, as if somehow the opinions of people are invalid. Just like when we talked about Larry Elder, and I asked you, Mark, do you think it's okay for white people to say that he is the black face of white supremacy? How is that okay? Surely not everybody in a group are going to have the same opinions, perspectives, or wants or needs out of government. And to continually attack people of color or black people in America because they're on the so-called conservative wing. You guys have just sat there and spoken to Travis about Obama being inspirational for people like Hakeem Jeffries. Well, what about Tim Scott then? What about all the black Republicans?
We just had a black Republican on. Shaquille, we just had a black Republican on. Well, I don't know if he's a Republican. We just had a black conservative on yesterday and everything. And you did not hear me press back on him. Mr. Washington would actually be considered a conservative. Lee Newton Rhodes found him for me and everything. If you have a direct contact to Lee Elder or want to find a way for me to reach out to Lee Elder, I will gladly have him on the show and everything. I had Courtney Gill, who was
the issue. Now,
I'm talking about this attitude that you guys have, and one of our former guests, because he's not here, I'm not going to mention him on air, has that because you guys are black, somehow you guys are the only ones whose opinion on
Nope.
things that deal with race relations matter. And anybody who is also of color, who has an opinion that's not the same as yours, should somehow, there's a justification for you to ridicule them and etc. And Jatovi, you can say no all you like, but in one of the early days when I just had a discussion,
wondering when we can get.
you said to me,
Since your agitation with me,
the reason I'm saying, Jatovi, is for those handful of people that are still watching that want to know why I jump off the show, why I haven't been around for a while. Because in the early days when I asked you to stop that, you said to me that I was pushing white supremacist talking points, and
you didn't even listen to any. So this is the problem, Shaq.
why you wouldn't let me
This
speak.
is the problem.
Again,
Your sensitivity.
You tell me what the problem is, because surely I can't articulate it.
You have gotten triggered by whatever I've said.
I'm not triggered.
And you got triggered years ago. You got triggered at some point, and so this whole rant that you've gone on for about 10 minutes now, after Travis and I just had a great discussion, and I appreciate Travis for that discussion. I truly do, because I thought it was fun. We were going back and forth. It was you're not letting me answer. It was fun. It was what I thought that we were going to do, but you got upset because you weren't. Just as you know, okay, Travis is from Australia. I'm from the U.S. Of course, there's going to be a language barrier and there's going to be a cultural barrier that we have to get by. And we actually worked well and got by that today. And again, that's why I truly appreciate it. And I said it in the chat. I want to say it verbally now. I truly appreciate that conversation because it was fun. It was what conversations about sensitive things are supposed to be like. Yes, there are going to be contentious moments, but I don't hate Travis at all. I would love to have more discussions with Travis because I think it would be great in terms of coming from two completely different backgrounds on particular things that we completely agree on some particular things. Actually, a lot. You know, when we talked about school, we were right down on the same path, walking hand in hand. Man, I could have kissed you on the mouth with all the stuff that you said about it. But in terms of the thing that triggered Shaq, which he just jumped off and went to the background again, years ago, he got mad at me because I asked him, you know, if a person uses the N-word, and is that racist when he's using that N-word in this? And we were talking about the American culture and how this person and everywhere has pointed out that the situation was racist, but Shaq wanted to justify the use of the word. And that's where I said, you cannot say that. And I never said that he was racist. So that's where the histrionics, where he was talking about, well, you called me racist. No, I never did. I don't know him personally, so I cannot call him racist. I don't know, the businesses, so I cannot attack businesses or whatever, what you're saying. And even weeks ago or whenever it was when you said, well, you said I don't care. No, I didn't. I never said that because I actually used that as an analogy, basically saying when we're talking about what's going on in Israel and Palestine and the children here, and then you keep repeating something new, because when that initially happened, Shaq, you were one of the first ones that we were walking hand in hand and about to kiss on the mouth about talking about we don't need politics in this situation. We need to wait for the information. We need to focus on the humanity of the situation. And that's what we were talking about. But then later down the line, and this is where you came into play, started saying, well, why do people in the States even care about what's going over there? Why does anybody protest? And I used an analogy. I literally said, and you go back and listen to it at whatever mark that you said it was. I literally said, Shaq, it's as if you were to not care about. I literally said those words. So I know what I said, and I will never back down from what I said. I guess I'm part Australian in that part. So I will not back down on that portion because that is what I said. I never said that you did, and because I know you care about those individuals. I know that you do work in that field. I just stated it would be like as if. So I used it as an analogy. But you got triggered, set off again, just like on anything that I say. Even if we agree, you want to argue. You want to argue. I don't know why. Because again, it could be that language barrier, but again, let me finish real quick. So again, this should not be a show. We shouldn't even have this segment right now going on for about 15 minutes complaining about. Yes, this can be all done backstage. And if you don't like the fact that, okay, I am against the killing of both the Israeli and the Jewish individuals just as much as I'm against the killing of the Palestinians and the children there. No, you won't even let me finish because, again, this is a prime example. 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 This is a prime example of you not, if you getting triggered.
I just have a quick question. Hold on a second, Jacoby. Hold on a second, Jacoby, because I do have a quick question for Travis and everything. And
why do you want to carry on like that? You want to say shit, absolute shit. If you don't like,
do you care? Do you care about the Israeli individuals and those the Palestinian individuals equally as they feel? Yes or no? You just got triggered at me even saying that. You got triggered at me. Did you not interject when I said that? Did you not interject when I said that? Yes. You just did that.
No, that's not what you said. Don't change the goalposts. Right? You want to be really sneaky and all that. Okay? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm not triggered.
Let Mark get his question out, Shaq. Let Mark get his question out.
Mark is not you.
Let Mark get his question out.
I have a question, and it's a question. Hold on a second. I've got a question because I don't know. Because, like I said, unfortunately, I've not watched the show. And I can't say I haven't watched the show, but I have watched parts of it and not all of it and everything. Travis, do y'all have any of these kind of debates and everything? Because it sounds like y'all do. And is there any times that folks, whether it's Shaquille or you, are triggered on the Edge radio and everything? Like I said, it seems like y'all have some very robust discussions and everything, but I'm just wondering if y'all get as robust as some of the times the conversations get here. Because like I said, I've just seen clips of the show, but I've not watched a full show. I like to come on like Kim does and everything. I put the notice in that I like to pop in and everything, but definitely, do you have these kind of robust conversations?
I have to say, me and Shaq clash every now and then. I consider Shaq a lefty. So that gives you a bit of an idea about Australian politics. But it's really hard to group people into left, right, Democrat, Republic, because some issues you might be left on one issue, but on the next issue you might be right on the next one, and the next one you'll be down the middle. One thing I'm finding, a lot of people who are on the left side of politics, like, do you guys have Extinction Rebellion in America? The guys that glue themselves to the road, like for the save the environment.
We don't have that, but we do have an incident recently. Actually, here we had some people that literally stopped the traffic, and because they were being pro-Palestine, so they literally stopped a major highway and they did some protest. But they didn't glue themselves.
I think that's stupid, but anyway. So we've got a group over in Australia. I'm considered an extremist because one of the political parties I was associated with wanted to. The biggest problem, especially in the immigration side of things in Australia, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the schools, the hospitals, the supermarkets to deal with massive population increase. Like I said, you can go half a day driving up north and like we've got the land. If we brought all these people over, they'd probably starve to death because we don't have the food, we don't have the shops, we don't have houses for them. We've already got, so in WA, we've got 2.7 million people. We have 70,000 people homeless. We just don't have the infrastructure, and it's a major problem what's going on at the moment. They're just making things harder by bringing more people into the country uncontrollable. We need to slow down the immigration, help the people where their health lives are at risk, and then build the infrastructure to grab everyone else. And our government just won't do that. And because I have that view, I'm considered extreme right. Like I'm far right extremist sort of thing. I'm like, you're an idiot. Anyway, so do we have these heated debates at Edge? Yeah, we do. About the only thing that the biggest difference I noticed with Edge is we try to control and limit who talks at what time, because there's no real point having just talking over the top of each other, because I've got these in my earphones. A lot of people watch on their phone and social media devices. So you need to be able to give people the opportunity to get their points across. Talking over people just makes you sound immature and unprofessional.